Chapter 39. Fan Li's cultivation base was at the first level of the arterial circulation realm, while Qin Wentian was at the 9th level of the body refinement realm. As long as they didn't venture too deep into the dark forest, they wouldn't encounter any danger easily. Hence, Qin Wentian and Fan Li passed their days leisurely. Qin Wentian, you've already started to break through to the arterial circulation realm. What kind of astral soul do you want for your second astral soul? Fan Li asked Qin Wentian as they walked through the forest. Fan Li was filled with anticipation for Qin Wentian to condense his second astral soul. Since his first astral soul was already condensed from an astral soul from the third heavenly layer, there was no doubt that his second astral soul would be condensed from the third heavenly layer. The tyrannical heavenly hammer astral soul had bestowed upon Qin Wentian. I haven't decided yet. Above the 9 astral rivers, there are countless constellations. This time around, I have to choose wisely. Qin Wentian smiled. He was also filled with anticipation for his second astral soul. You pervert. Fan Li cursed in a low voice. Many people's consciousness can't even remain in the first heavenly layer for too long. They can only condense an astral soul from the third heavenly layer. However, although you are a pervert, there's still a gap between you and me. Fan Li replied with a straight face. Qin Wentian was already used to Fan Li's shameless boasting. His lips curled up in a disdainful smile, as though he was intentionally angering Fan Li. There's someone fighting. The two of them suddenly spoke at the same time. After which, they sprinted forward with swift steps as though they were flying. Little Rascal who was hiding in the grass followed closely behind them. Not far away from Qin Wentian, Lu Yan was filled with despair. She had never thought that she would encounter a 4th-level demonic beast, the green-scaled python. In front of her, the python coiled around her friend, Zhuo Fan, and swallowed him whole. The cruelty of the scene caused her legs to go soft. Lu Yan, run! Not far away, Lu Yu roared in rage when he saw Lu Yan standing there in a daze. However, Lu Yan was only 16 years old after all. Such a scene caused her heart to crumble. Her body trembled in fear as she stared at the python, staring at her in a daze. The python stopped in front of Lu Yan, looking down at her. At this moment, Lu Yan's mind was in a complete mess, to the point that she didn't even hear the whistling sound of the wind. Evil creature. Qin Wentian was like an arrow released from a bow as he pounced towards the head of the python. The third style of the dragon subduing fists, 9 heavens dragon roar, was blasted out, and a strong gust of wind was generated. The python turned its cold eyes towards Qin Wentian and opened its bloody mouth wide, biting towards Qin Wentian. Bang! Like a landslide, a tyrannical force shook the python's head, causing its huge head to bounce back, while its huge tail swept across the void. Go! Qin Wentian shouted to Lu Yan, who was below him. He grabbed the python's tail, and his entire body was flung out of the way. At the same time, the whistling sound of an arrow whistling through the air was heard, aiming straight for the eyes of the python. Only now did Lu Yan react. She turned and fled, while Qin Wentian's body was slammed into a huge tree. His entire body was in pain, but luckily, his physique was extremely strong, and he didn't suffer any serious injuries. A terrifying roar pierced the eardrums of those who heard it. The python had suffered an attack from Qin Wentian, and had its eyes pierced by Qin Wentian's tracking arrow. It actually turned and fled, and didn't enter a state of rage. Evidently, it could still think. How painful. Qin Wentian didn't chase after it. He glanced at Fan Li. Fatty, not bad. Hee hee. Fatty grinned as he walked over. His second astral soul, the Ghost Mask astral soul, bestowed upon him the power of will. He was able to slightly change the direction of his arrows, and could easily see through the cultivation base of others. Although this type of astral soul couldn't directly bestow a powerful attack or defense, it was classified as a control-type astral soul, and had an extremely high potential for growth. After all, currently, Fatty could only use this power on his arrows. Not only that, he could only change the direction of his arrows at the most crucial moment. But in the future, when his will grew stronger, he would be able to directly control swords and objects. Are you alright? Qin Wendian walked towards Lu Yan, as he stretched out his hands towards her. After the python had escaped, Lu Yan was completely drained of all her strength. She sat weakly on the ground, but when she saw the smile on the young man's face, a smile also appeared on her face. Stretching out her hands, she grasped Qin Wendian's palm and stood up. Thank you. Lu Yan had been in despair earlier, but Qin Wendian had pulled her back from the brink of death. Don't worry about it, just be careful in the future. Qin Wendian smiled. Lu Yan smiled and nodded her head. But when she thought of Zhuo Fan's death, an expression of sorrow appeared on her face. Above the forest, a black raven, attracted by the battle earlier, let out a caw, adding a sense of desolation to the atmosphere. Black Raven. Fan Lu abruptly raised his head, and his eyes narrowed as he stared at the black raven circling in the air. After which, he murmured, "What a lingering spirit." Qin Wendian's brows twitched as he raised his head. He immediately understood what had happened. He had not forgotten the lesson he had learned from the demonic wolves. Orphan's friend was able to tame demonic beasts. Lu Yan, don't tell anyone that we're acquainted. Qin Wendian spoke to Lu Yan. After which, he exchanged a glance with Fan Lu, and the two of them turned and sprinted towards the depths of the dark forest. This scene caused Lu Yan to be stunned. She wanted to chase after them, but at the same time, a raging wind kicked up, causing the leaves on the trees to rustle. From afar, a few flying beasts swooped over, and very quickly, they flew past her head. There were actually human silhouettes on top of the flying beasts. Upon seeing this scene, Lu Yu instantly pulled Lu Yan back. Don't chase after them, they've met with a powerful opponent. Brother. Lu Yan looked at Lu Yu, only to hear him continuing, this Qin Wendian was willing to endure the attack of the green-scaled python to save you. It seems like he likes you a little. However, these people riding on flying beasts are obviously more powerful. Remember what Qin Wendian said earlier, we don't know him. As the sound of his voice faded, the silhouette of a young man riding on a third-level Black Hawk returned. This person was none other than Yi Zhan. Yi Zhan had a smile on his face as he dismounted and walked towards Lu Yan and Lu Yu. I'm Yi Zhan, a student from the Royal Academy. How about you two? My name is Lu Yu, and this is my younger sister, Lu Yan. Lu Yu carefully replied. Yi Zhan's smile was gentle, but he didn't dare to be careless. That person earlier is named Qin Wendian, a student from the Emperor's Star Academy. However, I'm afraid that he won't be able to walk out of the dark forest alive. How long have you known him? Yi Zhan casually asked. Not too long ago. Seeing the smile on Yi Zhan's face, Lu Yu didn't dare to lie. Don't be so nervous, we're only targeting him. We have no ill intentions towards you. Yi Zhan smiled. Only then did Lu Yu heave a sigh of relief, while Lu Yan started to worry about Qin Wendian. Qin Wendian and Fan Lu were madly sprinting, but the speed of the flying beasts was too fast. The distance between them was gradually shortened. Little rascal, transform! Qin Wendian roared. Momentarily, a white silhouette expanded in size, instantly appearing in front of Qin Wendian and Fan Lu. The two of them directly leapt onto the silhouette, squeezing together. Sit tight, how are their cultivation bases? Qin Wendian asked Fan Lu. 3 of them. Orphan and the beast tamer are still manageable, but the last one is extremely difficult to deal with. I can't see through his cultivation base with my spiritual sense. I'm afraid that he's at least at the 3rd level of arterial circulation. Fan Li's back was facing Qin Wendian. His legs clamped onto little rascal's body as a bow appeared in his hands. In an instant, 3 arrows pierced through the air. However, the speed at which the Black Hawk dodged was too fast, causing the arrows to deviate from their original trajectories. In addition to the terrifying speed of the black silhouette, Fan Li's spiritual sense couldn't control the arrows to catch up to it. How troublesome. Fan Li stated in a depressed tone, luckily this little rascal's speed is fast enough. If it wasn't for the two of us, he wouldn't even need to transform, and would be able to easily shake off the pursuit of the Black Hawk. But this isn't a solution. Let's prepare for battle and kill the beast tamer. If we do that, they won't be able to control the Black Hawk anymore. Qin Wentian suggested. Right, let's wait for an opportunity. The two of them started to discuss. Fan Li didn't waste his astral energy as he continued shooting arrows. They continued to advance deeper into the dark forest. Huayun was somewhat depressed. He didn't expect that it would be so tiring to chase after the two of them. Not only that, the white dog was running all over the place. Right now, he didn't even know where they were. There was a possibility that powerful demonic beasts would appear at any moment. In front of them, the forest was no longer there. Instead, it was a vast open space. Ahead of them, there seemed to be a misty mountain valley. It's the fantasy city. Huayun's eyes narrowed as he stared at the misty mountain valley. They had actually arrived at the boundary of the fantasy city within the dark forest. Qin Wentian and the rest also halted. Ahead of them, within the misty mountain valley, a city could be seen flickering in and out of existence, appearing illusory and illusory. They seemed to be extremely fearful of this place. Fatty narrowed his eyes as he stared at the three pursuers. This time around, Qin Wentian wouldn't be able to escape even if he grew wings. The two of them dismounted from Little Rascal's back. Little Rascal's body shrank back to its original size. Qin Wentian and Fan Li exchanged a glance. Their minds were connected, and after which, Fan Li instantly drew his bow. 9 astral arrows pierced through the air, whistling through the air as they shot towards Mu Yi. Little Rascal! Qin Wentian roared. Little Rascal directly leapt into Qin Wentian's hands, and after which, Qin Wentian abruptly flung Little Rascal towards Mu Yi. Mu Ye's countenance stiffened when he saw the 9 arrows shooting towards him. The space in front of him had been sealed. Gathering his strength, Mu Yi abruptly slammed his palms against the incoming arrows, using brute force to break them apart. At the same instant, a snowy puppy appeared in front of him. Its body abruptly expanded in size as it swiped its sharp claws at Mu Ye's head. Mu Ye's countenance drastically changed as he controlled the Black Hawk to fly upwards. However, Little Rascal's sharp claws directly slammed into the Black Hawk's head, causing it to plummet downwards. Mu Yi also lost his balance as he plummeted downwards. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. It was too fast. Earlier, the 9 arrows were merely used to control Mu Yi, causing him to fall into a dire situation. At the boundary of the mist, Fatty's arrow was aimed straight at him as he grinned. Chapter 40. Mu Ye's heart sank to the bottom of the valley when he saw the shameless smile on Fatty's face. Being at the arterial circulation realm, he had no way to dodge in the air. He could only watch helplessly as the arrows pierced through the air. Puchi. Mu Yi did his best to block 2 of the arrows, but one of them still pierced through the center of his brows. This time around, the price he had to pay was death. At the same instant that Mu Yi was struck, Huayun leapt down from the back of the Black Eagle and dashed towards Fan Li. Qin Wentian stepped out, dashing towards Huayun. His dragon-subduing fists blasted out, clashing head-on with Huayun. Die! Huayun's eyes flashed with an intense killing intent. The fearsome starfall fists swept out tyrannically, and Qin Wentian only felt a terrifying shockwave blasting towards him. Borrowing the force of the impact, he was sent flying backwards, slamming into Fan Li who was behind him. Fan Li retreated a few steps, and only stabilized himself after he had retreated into the mist. We can't win, what should we do? Fan Li sighed as he steadied Qin Wentian's body. If we can't win, we can only run. Qin Wentian's arm was still in intense pain. If it weren't for his quick reflexes, his entire arm would have been crippled. Little Rascal seemed to understand Qin Wentian's intentions, and immediately rushed over. The two of them leapt onto Little Rascal's back, and Little Rascal directly brought them into the mist. This scene caused Huayun to be stunned. Didn't they know that the illusionary city was a forbidden zone? Idiots who don't know the immensity of death. Their first choice was to kill Mu Yi because they wanted to prevent him from pursuing them. Orphan walked up, silently sighing in his heart. The coordination between the two of them was too good, and there was even a demonic beast that could transform. If it wasn't for the fact that they were afraid of Mu Ye's demonic beasts chasing after them, they would have chosen to kill him first. Sadly, they were dead meat. The dark forest was extremely vast, and there were some places that they couldn't enter. The illusionary city was a forbidden zone, and once they entered, they wouldn't be able to come out. Everything is done. However, you have to account for Mu Ye's death. Huayun turned and left, causing Orphan's expression to stiffen. Amidst the dense fog, Little Rascal carried Qin Wentian and Fan Lu as they sprinted madly. No one is chasing us? Fan Lu asked. Michum, Qin Wentian replied. Something doesn't seem right. Could it be that it's very dangerous? Fan Li's body trembled involuntarily. It seemed like they didn't dare to enter. Little demon, am I going to die here? Fatty sounded like he was about to cry. In the fog, they couldn't see the road clearly. They were actually lost. After another hour, they finally walked out of the fog. However, the moment they came out, they were shocked by what they saw. In front of them was a castle. Fog Illusion City. It wasn't an illusion city, it was a real castle. Not only that, but they also saw many armored soldiers in the castle. They were all clad in black armor and exuded a murderous aura. When they saw the two of them, a group of black armored soldiers walked over and pointed their spears at them. The murderous aura caused the fatty to almost fall. Fatty, I can't be this unlucky, right? This time around, Fatty really cried. These people were all at the arterial circulation realm. Everyone's cultivation base was higher than his. There was no way he could escape. Qin Wentian didn't expect that there was such a castle hidden in the dark forest, and that it had trained a group of terrifying soldiers. The killing intent grew increasingly intense. Qin Wentian and Fatty released their astral souls as they made preparations to flee. Qin Wentian. At this moment, from afar, a silhouette clad in armor walked over and called out Qin Wentian's name. His voice was slightly hoarse, and his head was covered by a helmet, revealing only his eyes. Huh? Qin Wentian's eyes narrowed. In this place, there was actually someone who recognized him. All of you, retreat. The silhouette indifferently spoke. In an instant, the group of black-armored soldiers all left, causing Fan Lu to heave a sigh of relief. It seemed like Fatty's luck was really good. You are? Qin Wentian curiously stared at the mysterious figure. This fog illusion city is a forbidden place. Those who enter it can forget about leaving. Naturally, you are an exception. Follow me. The voice of the mysterious figure was still hoarse. After speaking, he turned and walked towards the castle. Qin Wentian and Fan Lu followed behind, their hearts filled with bewilderment. The mysterious man brought them to a comfortable residence. There were even maids here, and they were all quite beautiful. Take good care of them. The mysterious figure instructed the maid. After which, he turned to Qin Wentian and said, if you wish to leave, just inform the maid. I will arrange for you to leave. But remember, do not reveal this place to anyone else. If not, I can guarantee that you won't live past 3 days. Of course, of course. Fatty grinned. The mysterious figure glanced at Qin Wentian and said, your cultivation base has already reached the 9th level of the body refinement realm. You can attempt to break through to the arterial circulation realm. After speaking, the mysterious figure departed, leaving behind a puzzled Qin Wentian. Who is he? After the mysterious figure and the maid left, Fan Lu asked Qin Wentian. How would I know? Qin Wentian shrugged his shoulders. Even if he racked his brains, he wouldn't be able to figure it out. Should I sneak away? Fan Le murmured in a low voice. However, as the sound of his voice faded, he instantly regretted it. Because, outside, several beauties walked in with food in their hands. Instantly, Fan Li's eyes widened. How could he still remember to sneak away? The beauties placed the food on the table and retreated to the side. Fan Le laughed, "Beautiful sisters, let's eat together." The maids shook their heads, indicating that they didn't dare to. Fan Le felt that it was a pity. Glancing at the food, his eyes widened. Leopard guts, bear's heart, scarlet serpent fruit, isn't this food a little too good? Fan Le was stunned. However, this castle was located in the middle of the dark forest. In addition to the strength of these people, they indeed had a natural advantage. What made Fan Le even more astonished was that after a short while, there were people who delivered a few yuan meteor stones to Qin Wentian, saying that they were for Qin Wentian to break through to the next level. Fan Le even suspected that Qin Wentian was the young master of this castle. As the saying goes, good brothers are loyal to each other. Fan Le very generously split the yuan meteor stones evenly between Qin Wentian, worried that Qin Wentian wouldn't be able to use them. Qin Wentian knew that the other party didn't have any ill intentions towards him after seeing the yuan meteor stones given to him. If not, there was no need for him to do such a thing. After which, Qin Wentian began to quietly cultivate. It was indeed necessary for him to break through to the next level. As for Fan Le, he enjoyed the free food and chatted with the beautiful ladies. His days were spent in bliss. The food here was definitely the best of the royal clan. Even the descendants of the royal clan of Chu wouldn't be able to enjoy such luxuries. Other than the fact that they were treated well, no one had ever come to disturb them before. The night sky was as dark as ink. Qin Wentian sat cross-legged on the ground. The dense fog in the sky had no way to obstruct the astral light that cascaded downwards. At this moment, rumbling sounds could be heard coming from within Qin Wentian's body, as though his entire body was shimmering with a unique light. His body is sparkling and translucent, and the astral light is nourishing his body. This is the pinnacle of the body refinement realm. Fan Le lazily laid down at the side, observing Qin Wentian's cultivation. This fellow was truly hardworking, immersing himself in his cultivation for the past few days. Puff! A light sound drifted out, causing Fan Li's eyes to narrow. Staring at Qin Wentian, a smile appeared on his face. He's starting to activate his acupoints. Is he trying to break through to the arterial circulation realm? This fellow's cultivation speed is too terrifying. It seems like it's only been a few days since he broke through. Fan Le murmured in his heart. Although there were external factors such as food and yuan meteor stones, Qin Wentian's cultivation art and astral souls were both extremely tyrannical, and extremely suitable for body refinement. The purpose of the body refinement realm was to forge a perfect physique. For those with weak cultivation arts, or the astral energy bestowed by their constellations would be weak, resulting in a poor result in their body refinement. On the other hand, the better the cultivation art, the more tyrannical the astral energy within the body would be, and the faster one's body refinement would be, allowing them to forge a perfect physique within a short period of time. Qin Wentian clearly belonged to the latter category. Tyrannical cultivation arts, tyrannical astral souls. The tyrannical astral energy from the heavenly hammer constellation unceasingly descended upon Qin Wentian's body. Within his body, the boundless astral energy circulated and congregated at the various acupoints, frenziedly breaking through. There were many meridians and acupoints in the human body. To break through to the arterial circulation realm, one needed to activate all the acupoints in the body, allowing the body to store even more yuan energy. After which, one needed to connect all the meridians and acupoints in the body, forming a complete arterial pathway that could connect to every part of the human body, allowing the yuan energy in the body to circulate unimpeded. Through this complete arterial pathway, the yuan energy stored in the four limbs and bones of the human body, as well as the acupoints, would be able to connect to the hands, legs, eyes, ears, and other parts of the body. Not only would one's attacks be more powerful, their vision, hearing, and other abilities would also be enhanced. Regardless of whether it was an ordinary wuxiu or a stellar martial cultivator, they would all be able to break through to the arterial circulation realm. As the acupoints were activated one by one, an expression of agony could be seen on Qin Wentian's face. Activating the acupoints was an extremely painful process, but Qin Wentian still gritted his teeth and persevered, causing crisp sounds to resound throughout the silent space. Fan Lu, who was standing at the side, was speechless. This fellow was really going all out, but even so, the corners of his mouth curled up in a smile. Orkan's disdainful gaze, as well as Orfan's frenzied pursuit, were all deeply engraved in Fan Li's mind. Indeed, Qin Wentian had to work hard in his cultivation, so that he could break through as soon as possible and condense his second astral soul. And now, the 1-month time limit for the examination had finally arrived. Early in the morning, the students who had entered the dark forest for the examination walked out one after another. The teachers of the 9 academies were all waiting outside. Those who walked out from the dark forest would become members of their respective academies in the future. Janice and Mustang stood together, while Orkan, Mo Qingcheng, and Luo Huan stood beside them. Orfan has come out. Janice smiled when he saw Orfan's silhouette. In the future, Orfan would also join his sect. Luo Huan's beautiful eyes flickered with unhappiness. This Orfan had once acted against Qin Wentian in the dark forest. Although she and Mo Qingcheng had kept a close watch on Orkan, it was hard to guarantee that Orfan wouldn't seek help from others. After all, the students who participated in the examination came from all over the dark forest, and they didn't know each other very well. The only exception was those from the royal capital. Mo Qingcheng glanced at Orfan with a cold gaze, causing Orfan's countenance to stiffen. He lowered his head, not daring to look into Mo Qingcheng's eyes. In front of this woman, he couldn't even lift his head, even if he wanted to look at her for a moment longer. Mo Qingcheng had been paying attention to the students who exited the dark forest. With regards to the incident that day, she had always felt guilty in her heart. When she saw Qin Wentian chasing after Orfan, she had directly berated Qin Wentian, and didn't ask about the details of what had happened. However, even after the sun had set, as the red glow of the setting sun shone upon the dark forest, Qin Wentian still hadn't appeared. Over 300 students from the Emperor Star Academy had already exited the dark forest. Compared to the other academies, the passing rate of the Emperor Star Academy was the highest, but the number of students was still the lowest. However, there were over 100 cities in the Chu country, and in addition to the young geniuses from the other countries, the total number of students from the Chu country seemed insignificant. Orfan, what did you guys do to Qin Wentian? Mo Qingcheng's gaze abruptly landed on Orfan, as she coldly asked. I don't know. The dark forest is so vast. Maybe he met some demonic beasts and died. Orfan replied in a flustered tone. A tyrannical aura gushed forth from Mo Qingcheng, causing Orfan to hide behind Orkan. Mo Qingcheng coldly stated, if something happened to him, and it was done by you, just you wait. After speaking, Mo Qingcheng mounted her flying crane and flew away. Luo Huan stared at the departing silhouette of Mo Qingcheng, silently musing that since this woman already knew her mistake, she couldn't blame her anymore. Her gaze similarly coldly swept towards Orkan and Orfan. Regarding this matter, I will investigate it thoroughly. Mustang regretted agreeing to his master's suggestion. After all, Qin Wentian's cultivation base was still weak, and he was plotted against by others. If something really happened to him, Mustang wouldn't be able to rest easy. Chapter 41. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed since the examination for the 9 martial academies. The addition of new students increased the vitality of the various academies. Naturally, the Emperor Star Academy was no exception. However, there were some people who couldn't bring themselves to be happy. Luo Huan waited outside the dark forest for 3 days but didn't see Qin Wentian. Hence, she returned to the Emperor's Star Academy. At this moment, she was sitting in a spectator's stand, watching the ranking competition between the new students of the Emperor's Star Academy. Every year, the Emperor's Star Academy would undergo a ranking competition that lasted for 7 days to determine the strength of the new students. This not only concerned the glory of the students, it also concerned the resources they would be able to enjoy. This was the best method to motivate the students, encouraging them to work harder and become stronger. Only with competition would there be motivation. Today was the first day, and coincidentally, the one standing on the platform was Orphan. Among this batch of new students, Orphan's strength could be considered one of the more powerful ones. After defeating his opponent, he was in high spirits. Upon seeing this scene, Luo Huan's smiling eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. She really liked that sunny big boy. Did he really die in the dark forest? Today, he should also be standing on this stage. Although he wasn't the most dazzling group of people, in the end, he would still shine brightly. At the edge of the dark forest, 2 youths walked out. Behind them, there was an adorable snowy puppy. The air here is so fresh. Qin Wentian gazed at the city in front of him as a smile appeared on his face. At this moment, his demeanor seemed to have changed, and his eyes were even brighter than before. Currently, he had already stimulated all of the astral energy in his body, and at the same time, he had completely opened up his stellar meridians, connecting them to his internal organs and acupoints, allowing him to reach all the major parts of his body. In the body refinement realm, one would be able to refine a perfect physique. After stepping into the arterial circulation realm, one would be able to stimulate all of the astral energy in one's body, allowing one's vision and hearing to become sharper, and one's movements to become more agile. Beauties of the royal capital, here I come. Fatty closed his eyes as he drew in a deep breath. Pooh! Qin Wentian directly kicked out, causing Fatty to almost fall to the ground. Qin Wentian, you've gone too far. Fatty placed his hands on his hips and glared at Qin Wentian. Immediately after, he saw Qin Wentian turn around and look at him. Instantly, Fatty's aura deflated. Thinking back to the time when Qin Wentian broke through and he was beaten into a pig's head, he could only curse in a low voice, "You're bullying Fatty too much." As he spoke, the Fatty walked forward. Qin Wentian's lips curled into a faint smile as he followed. He couldn't be blamed for not being able to stand this Fatty. This Fatty was simply too wretched. The night before they left the fantasy city, this Fatty had actually called his servant sister to his room to talk about life. That wasn't all. The crucial point was that when Qin Wentian returned from his cultivation session, the maidservant looked at him with a pitiful expression. "Young Master Wentian, you were looking for me?" That was in the middle of the night. At that time, Qin Wentian had already violently beaten up Fatty. "You can be wretched, but don't you dare use my name to tease beauties." However, thinking back to his experience in the fantasy city, even now, Qin Wentian was puzzled. Who exactly was the person who knew him? Not only did he not kill him, but he even treated him so well. Arriving at the entrance of the city, Qin Wentian was preparing to enter. However, he discovered a familiar silhouette outside the city gates. It was none other than Francis. "Master." Francis, who was seated on a large rock, saw Qin Wentian. His eyes instantly lit up as he jogged over. Seeing that Francis was covered in dust, Qin Wentian's heart warmed. He didn't expect that Francis would be waiting for him here. "Why are you waiting here?" Qin Wentian asked. "Hee, I arrived here 7 days ago, but in the end, I didn't see you among the returning students. Hence, I asked your senior sister, and she also waited for me for 3 days before leaving. I'm fine, so I decided to wait here. In any case, you will definitely pass by this place when you come out." Francis laughed. "Oh yes, Master, I've already found a safe place." Francis laughed again, as though he had just thought of something joyous. "Let's talk while we walk." Qin Wentian replied. "Okay." Francis nodded his head, as he continued to introduce to Qin Wentian, among the major powers in the royal capital, there's a superpower named the Divine Weapon Pavilion. This Divine Weapon Pavilion is extremely powerful, and they mainly sell divine weapons. However, they also sell other types of treasures, and it's said that as long as you want to buy something, the Divine Weapon Pavilion would be able to acquire it. Especially when it comes to the variety of divine weapons, the Divine Weapon Pavilion has many weaponsmiths under their command. However, they are different from the Star River Association. They don't accept missions, and only sell treasures. Currently, I'm a guest in the Divine Weapon Pavilion. That's right. What price do they pay for you to forge weapons for them? Qin Wentian inquired. Different levels of guest can enjoy different treatments. For example, they can enter the Martial Pavilion to cultivate different cultivation arts and innate techniques. Every month, they will receive a fixed amount of Yuan stones and Yuan meteor stones. For high-level guests, their treatment in the Divine Weapon Pavilion is extremely good, even surpassing that of the Star River Association. Francis continued. An expression of contemplation appeared on Qin Wentian's face. Francis becoming a guest of the Divine Weapon Pavilion was indeed a good choice. He could focus on forging weapons, and at the same time, he could reap some benefits. Not only that, if he wanted to do anything in the future, it would be much more convenient. For example, through Francis, he could obtain Yuan meteor stones for his cultivation. Francis, if you have a second-level divine imprint, would you be able to forge a second-level divine weapon? The comprehension of divine imprints is exceedingly difficult, it's impossible to succeed in a single attempt. Even if I managed to comprehend it, I would have to go through many attempts before I could inscribe it properly. But if I could truly comprehend second-level divine imprints, forging a second-level divine weapon wouldn't be a problem. Right, let's go to the Divine Weapon Pavilion. This time around, I'll be the one inscribing the divine imprint, and we'll work together to forge a divine weapon. After we're done, see if you can get me a few Yuan meteor stones. An expression of contemplation appeared on Qin Wentian's face. Although he had broken through to the arterial circulation realm, he had yet to open an astral gate. Opening an astral gate required the support of an immense amount of astral energy, and since he hadn't succeeded a few days ago, he might still need the help of Yuan meteor stones. Not only that, the tiny astral being in his sea of consciousness also required an immense amount of astral energy to be activated. If he were to rely on the astral energy within his body to replenish his energy, it would be too slow. If I'm able to forge a second-level divine weapon, Yuan meteor stones shouldn't be a problem. Francis had a joyful expression on his face. The population of the royal capital was extremely high, and many of the wuxios were extremely thirsty for a divine weapon. This was especially so for those adventurers. With a divine weapon in their hands, they would be able to save their lives in crucial moments. Why didn't I see anyone using a divine weapon in the dark forest? Qin Wentian asked Fan Lu. Fan Lu had been listening at the side, silently cursing this freak in his heart. To think that this freak even knew divine imprints. Divine imprints were extremely profound and required a lot of time. Most people wouldn't be willing to waste too much time on it. How can a student bring a divine weapon with them during the examination? Do you think the teachers of the academy are all fools? Fatty cast a disdainful glance at Qin Wentian. That's true. Qin Wentian shrugged his shoulders as he laughed. Currently, as he walked along the streets, he saw many people carrying weapons. The Divine Weapon Pavilion was located in the 4th district of the royal capital. There were many powerful clans here, and even the Star River Association was located in this district. The roads here were extremely wide, and the buildings here were majestic and majestic. That should be the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Francis pointed to a gigantic building complex in front of them. It exuded an imposing aura, and there were many people entering and exiting it. This was one of the most popular places for the rich and powerful in the royal capital. Master, do you want to go in and take a look? Francis asked. There's no need for that. Just take me to the place where you forge weapons and start forging them. Qin Wentian replied. He still wanted to open his astral gate as soon as possible and condense his second astral soul. After that, he would go to the Emperor's Star Academy and thank those people for their special care. Those people wanted him dead so badly. This time around, he would have to disappoint them. He was destined to enter the Emperor's Star Academy. Naturally, before that, he still needed to condense his second astral soul and raise his strength. After all, the Emperor's Star Academy was a place where experts were as common as the clouds. Francis led Qin Wendian around the main building area of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, and entered the inner courtyard of the Divine Weapon Pavilion from the side. The prosperity of the Divine Weapon Pavilion was all supported by the operations of the inner courtyard. Just like in the Star River Association, as a guest elder of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, Francis had his own weaponsmithing hall. Not only that, he had 2 apprentices to assist him in forging weapons. There were many types of weapon embryos and materials here, and the temperature of the flames in the furnace could be adjusted. The environment here was in no way inferior to that of the Star River Association. "Master, what type of divine weapon do you want to forge?" Walking to the place where the embryos were placed, Francis asked. "You choose what you are most proficient in. I've comprehended a type of second-level divine imprint, which is suitable for any type of divine weapon. If there are no problems on your side, this second-level divine imprint should be able to forge a second-level divine weapon. In that case, let's forge a bow." Fan Lu suddenly interjected from the side. Qin Wendian rolled his eyes, ignoring his words. A bow was one of the hardest divine weapons to inscribe. It was long, thin, curved, and extremely difficult to inscribe the divine imprint. In the end, Francis chose the embryos of a sword, and prepared to forge a sword. After carefully selecting the materials, Francis began to smelt the bow. As for Qin Wendian, he sat down and quietly comprehended the second-level divine imprint. It was an extremely complicated combination of divine imprints. Qin Wendian meticulously analyzed the divine imprint in his memory, and used his astral energy to imitate it in his arterial pathways. Chapter 42. The main hall of the Divine Weapon Pavilion was majestic and majestic. Resplendent lights illuminated the entire hall, and on the various counters, there were all sorts of divine weapons and treasures. The main hall of the Divine Weapon Pavilion was extremely spacious and had 3 levels. On average, there were tens of thousands of people entering and exiting it every day. At this moment, outside the main hall of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, a young man clad in white robes stepped in. In his hands was a flask of wine, and his body exuded the smell of alcohol. "Immortal drunken wine, are you here to look for treasures again? Do you want to come and take a look? Immortal drunken wine, come, let me see how many mouthfuls of wine are left in your flask." The moment the young man stepped into the Divine Weapon Pavilion, there were already people laughing and joking with him. Evidently, he was a frequent customer. "If someone wants to invite me for a drink, look for me again." The young man revealed a smile as he walked towards the second level of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Laughter rang out from the crowd as many people sighed inwardly. A talented and amiable young man like Immortal Drunken Wine was truly too rare nowadays. Immortal Drunken Wine was one of the 10 prodigies of the royal capital. His talent was extremely high, and his swordsmanship was astonishing. Although he rarely used his sword, everyone in the royal capital knew of him. Immortal Drunken Wine's swordsmanship was as good as his alcohol tolerance. It was said that there were people who saw him dancing with his sword when he was drunk, resembling an immortal. As for his real name, not many people remembered it. Immortal Drunken Wine had another hobby, which was to collect swords. Hence, he often came to the Divine Weapon Pavilion. On the second level of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, Immortal Drunken Wine walked straight to the place where swords were sold. On the wall, there were all sorts of sword hilts. "You want to see the new ones, right?" A beautiful maid stood in front of the wall and smiled at Immortal Drunken Wine. After which, she took down a few swords from the wall and passed them to Wine's sword. "Immortal, these are all newly forged swords, and they are all second-level mid-grade and high-grade." Immortal Drunken Wine looked at them one by one and smiled, I'll come again next time. The mates seemed to be used to this and didn't try to persuade him. At this moment, a sword apprentice brought 3 swords over and said, Sister Jian Wu, these are the newly forged divine weapons. Take them. Okay. Jian Wu took a look and infused her elemental energy into them. She then raised her head and looked at Wine's sword Immortal. These 3 swords are all second-level swords, but they aren't as good as the previous ones. Let me see. Wine's sword Immortal drank a mouthful of wine and received the 3 swords. Testing them one by one, he shook his head and pointed at the seemingly ordinary sword on the left. What's the price for this sword? A second-level low-grade sword. If you want it, you can have it for a second-layer Yuan Meteor Stone. Jianwu smiled. As for the second-layer Yuan Meteor Stone she was referring to, it was naturally the standard Yuan Meteor Stone. Yuan Meteor Stones were used for cultivation purposes, and could even aid stellar martial cultivators in forming an innate connection with their constellations. In the Tianwu continent, Yuan Meteor Stones were considered a high-grade currency. They were meteorites that fell from the heavens, and these meteorites were naturally irregularly dropped. Sometimes, a complete Yuan Meteor Stone would be equivalent to an incomparably valuable star ore, and after being polished and cut into pieces, they would be made into the standard size of Yuan Meteor Stones. Yuan stones, which contain the Yuan energy of heaven and earth, could also be used as currency. However, it was a low-grade currency. Those who came to the Divine Weapon Pavilion were all wealthy people, and their currency of exchange was usually Yuan Meteor Stones. Okay, I'll take it. Immortal Drunken Wine laughed, as he took out a Yuan Meteor Stone and handed it over to Jianwu. This caused Jianwu to be stunned. She had thought that Immortal Drunken Wine had casually said this, and hence, she had casually replied. However, the price of a second-layer Yuan Meteor Stone was definitely not low, and yet, Immortal Drunken Wine had directly snatched it away. This caused her to feel that something was amiss. Immortal Drunken Wine, what did you take advantage of this time? Let me take a look. At this moment, a middle-aged man walked over. He was none other than the supervisor elder of the second level of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Old Chen, take a look. Immortal Drunken Wine tossed the sword over to the supervisor elder, Yang Chen. Yang Chen received the sword, and infused the astral energy in his body into it. Gradually, his countenance became extremely fascinating. Looking at Jianwu, he asked, who sent this over? It was Francis, a guest elder, who asked me to send it over. He wanted me to sell it directly, as he urgently needs Yuan Meteor Stones. The swordsman replied. After selling the weapons forged by guest elders, there would be a cut of the profits. Immortal Drunken Wine, consider yourself ruthless. Yang Chen glared at Jianwu, as he turned and left, intending to look for Francis. I'll follow you to take a look. Immortal Drunken Wine laughed, as he followed Yang Chen to the backyard of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, where Francis was located. Francis obviously didn't expect that Yang Chen would come. As the supervisor elder of the second level of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, Yang Chen's status was extraordinary, far beyond what Francis could compare to. Francis, were you the one who inscribed the divine imprints on this sword? Yang Chen pointed to the sword in Immortal Drunken Wine's hand as he asked. Francis's eyes flickered, as he replied, yes, my master did. Can you allow me to meet with your master? Yang Chen smiled. I'll ask my master. Francis replied, as he entered the forging hall to seek Qin Wentian's opinion. A moment later, Yang Chen saw 2 youths walking out, and he couldn't help but be startled. Elder Yang Chen, this is my master, Qin Wentian. Francis introduced. Good, young geniuses. Grandmaster Qin, my name is Yang Chen, how about we change locations to chat? Yang Chen looked at Qin Wentian, and Qin Wentian nodded his head. He didn't expect that the divine imprint he inscribed would attract the attention of an elder of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. It seemed like his guess was right, the value of the divine imprint was extraordinary. The group of them arrived at a pavilion by the lake in the inner courtyard of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. The scenery here was exquisite. Immortal drunken wine, why are you still here? Yang Chen glared at immortal drunken wine. Those who can forge the sword I like are my friends. Naturally, I'm here to befriend them. Immortal drunken wine's breath reeked of alcohol. Do you want a sip? Immortal drunken wine raised his wine gourd, as he pointed it at Qin Wentian. This fellow is an interesting person. Qin Wentian laughed as he shook his head. Grandmaster Qin, there are still some flaws in this divine imprint. Yang Chen glanced at Qin Wentian, as he started to talk business. It's not a flaw, it's just that I have yet to fully comprehend it. Hence, there are still some flaws in it. Qin Wentian replied. Can you sell this divine imprint to my divine weapon pavilion? You can name the price. Yang Chen finally stated his purpose. Qin Wentian stared at him, as he smiled and shook his head. Giving it to Yang Chen in one go, if Yang Chen allowed the weaponsmiths of the divine weapon pavilion to comprehend it, his divine imprint would no longer be worth anything. Since this is the case, are you willing to become a guest of my divine weapon pavilion? I can help you apply for special privileges. Yang Chen continued. I don't have time to stay in the divine weapon pavilion. It's the same for Francis. Qin Wentian stared at Yang Chen, his words causing Yang Chen to furrow his brows. After which, Qin Wentian spoke, if Elder Yang has nothing else to say, I'll take my leave first. Grandmaster Qin, please wait a moment. Yang Chen blocked Qin Wentian's path, as he retrieved a few yuan meteor stones. The astral light within them was concentrated, and contained a vast amount of astral energy. These were all yuan meteor stones originating from the second heavenly layer. Grandmaster Qin, don't be in such a hurry to reject me. Consider this as the price I have to pay for that sword. Yang Chen pointed to the sword in immortal drunken wine's hand. Qin Wentian stared at the yuan meteor stones. Although he was extremely agitated in his heart, he still endured it. The people of the Divine Weapon Pavilion were truly rich. Back then in the Qin clan, even a single yuan meteor stone was considered a treasure. The Qin clan was simply too poor, and their resources were constantly being depleted. Fan Lu, who was standing at the side, narrowed his eyes, as a brilliant light flashed in his eyes. This time around, he was going to be rich. In the future, when Grandmaster Qin creates divine weapons, can you hand them over to my divine weapon pavilion for sale? My divine weapon pavilion will pay half of the selling price to Grandmaster Qin. Naturally, the forging materials will also be provided by my divine weapon pavilion. In addition, if Grandmaster Qin is unwilling to become a guest elder, I can raise Francis's rank, allowing him to enjoy the resources of the divine weapon pavilion. Yang Chen's words finally caused Qin Wentian's heart to waver. For the same item, if he were to sell it to the divine weapon pavilion, the difference in rewards would be like the difference between the heavens and the earth. The divine weapon pavilion would provide a huge platform for Grandmaster Qin. Not only that, the forging materials would also be provided by the divine weapon pavilion. The divine weapon pavilion's proposal of cooperation was already a sign of their sincerity. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to forge divine weapons frequently. Qin Wentian stared at Yang Chen. The rarer something is, the greater its value. In the future, when Grandmaster Qin creates more masterpieces, I will sell them in the form of auctions. Of course, we will not dare to set a limit on how many divine weapons Grandmaster Qin needs to forge. Grandmaster Qin can do whatever he wants, Yang Chen stated. I agree. A youthful smile blossomed on Qin Wentian's face. This scene caused Yang Chen to be stunned. Since this is the case, I won't stand on ceremony with these yuan meteor stones. A glint of light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes, as he unceremoniously kept the yuan meteor stones. Boss, what about mine? Fatty's eyes shone brightly as he stared at Qin Wentian, directly calling him boss. Qin Wentian cast a look of disdain at Fatty, but he still gave him a yuan meteor stone. Fatty had a pitiful expression on his face as he stared at the other yuan meteor stones in Qin Wentian's hands. However, he was ignored by Qin Wentian. Haha, Grandmaster Qin, in the future when you're free, come to the Divine Weapon Pavilion often. I will arrange a residence and a forging hall for Francis. If there's anything you need help with, Grandmaster Qin can look for me directly. Yang Qin stood up and laughed. These two little fellows were too interesting. No problem. Qin Wentian laughed. After which, Yang Qin bade farewell. Immortal Drunken Wine stared at Qin Wentian as he laughed. Come and look for me when you feel like drinking. After Yang Chen and Immortal Drunken Wine left, Qin Wentian stared at the Yuan meteor stones in his hands as a smile broke out on his face. Now, he could finally open the astral gate. Grandpa Qin, father. Qin Wentian silently called out in his heart. He hadn't forgotten that his Grandpa Qin and Father Qin were still imprisoned. Chapter 43. Very quickly, Yang Chen fulfilled his promise and made an exception to raise Francis's status as a guest elder. At the same time, Yang Chen bestowed upon Francis a large courtyard with an elegant pavilion, a pond and a pavilion, as well as a weaponsmithing hall that was even more abundant in resources. Francis was even provided with maids to take care of his daily needs. Naturally, Francis understood that all of this was because of Qin Wentian, which was why he could enjoy such treatment. At the start, Francis still had some doubts. However, when Qin Wentian taught him the second-level divine imprint, allowing him to slowly comprehend it, he finally understood why Yang Chen was so courteous. The value of the second-level divine imprint was definitely worth such treatment. Qin Wentian and Francis then worked together to forge a few more divine weapons. One of them was a set of second-level divine weapons that were specially made for Fan Luo. The arm guard on the wrist, as well as the sleeves of the arm guard, were made with extremely light materials. This way, Fan Luo could easily carry it on his arm, as though it was a piece of clothing. This was in consideration of the fact that Fan Li's close combat capabilities were at a disadvantage, and was specially made for him. This caused Fatty to be extremely excited, as he silently mused that if he followed a weaponsmith, he wouldn't have to worry about treasures. Even the way he addressed Qin Wentian became more intimate, calling him boss. After settling everything, Qin Wentian prepared to open the astral gate. Night, the astral light from the 9 heavenly layers cascaded downwards, illuminating the darkness. Qin Wentian's entire person was bathed in the astral light. The astral light from the heavenly hammer constellation from the 5th heavenly layer descended upon Qin Wentian, flowing into his body. At the same time, Yuan meteor stones were held in both of his hands. The surging astral energy flowed into his body through his stellar meridians, transforming into a terrifying astral whirlpool that rushed towards the location of the astral gate in his sea of consciousness. Everyone was born with an astral gate, but if one wanted to open a second astral gate, they had to first open their arterial circulation pathway, and then use the surging astral energy to open the second astral gate. This process required the support of a terrifying amount of astral energy. From this, one could see that cultivation required a huge amount of resources. Hence, some of the descendants of the rich and powerful had an advantage in their cultivation because they had more resources. Qin Wentian's mind kept shaking. The process was still very painful. Cultivation was a painful thing, but after the pain, you would be given the corresponding strength. Those who did not have great perseverance would not be able to step onto the path of the strong. Fatty had gone off to research his arm guard, while Francis was immersed in his comprehension of the divine inscriptions. Only little Rascal was squatting by Qin Wentian's side. The night was as deep as water, and Qin Wentian's entire body was enveloped in a layer of astral light, unceasingly enduring the impact. The astral energy within the 2 Yuan meteor stones in his hands was almost depleted. Finally, when the sun was about to rise, at the end of the stellar meridians, within Qin Wentian's sea of consciousness, a thunderous rumbling sound rang out as a second astral gate appeared. As the second astral gate appeared, Qin Wentian's body softly slumped onto the ground as a smile appeared on his face. Since the astral gate had been formed, condensing an astral soul wouldn't be too much of a problem for him. 2 second heavenly layer Yuan meteor stones. Cultivation is truly a waste of resources. Qin Wentian mumbled with a smile on his face. Little Rascal hopped onto his chest and stuck out its tongue, appearing exceptionally adorable. Little Rascal, I'll bring you to see senior sister Luo Huan soon. Qin Wentian patted Little Rascal's head as a smile appeared on his face. The Emperor's Star Academy was truly something to look forward to. How was senior sister Luo Huan? And also Orphan, he would never forget the grace he received from the two pursuers. Qin Wentian once again thought of that breathtaking countenance of Mo Qingcheng, the #1 beauty in Chu. With regards to beauties, all men would naturally have a favorable impression of her, and Qin Wentian was no exception. However, after that cold scolding from Mo Qingcheng, it caused the favorable impression he had of her to vanish into nothingness. During the day, Qin Wentian cultivated the innate technique of the dragon subduing fist. There were only 3 stances to the dragon subduing fist, but the innate technique was indeed a set of innate techniques. When one fought, one would be akin to an enraged dragon, roaring unceasingly, exuding a majestic aura. During the night, Qin Wentian started to condense an astral soul. He didn't plan to succeed in a single attempt, but rather, he wanted to observe it first. His perception extended to the 9 heavenly layers. The boundless astral river was as resplendent as silver, with stars of various shapes and colors intertwining with each other, forming an incomparably resplendent picture. Right now, Qin Wentian's perception could already easily soar through the first 2 heavenly layers. When he reached the 3rd heavenly layer, he would feel a sense of pressure. The pressure from the 4th heavenly layer was even stronger, and the 5th heavenly layer was still a headache for him. He tried again and again, seeking a breakthrough, allowing himself to remain in the 5th heavenly layer for a longer period of time. After a few days, Qin Wentian's perception gradually adapted to the pressure, allowing him to endure for a longer period of time. Tonight, 9 silver needles pierced into 9 different acupoints in Qin Wentian's sea of consciousness, sealing his 6 senses, allowing him to focus without any distractions. His perception was unprecedentedly focused, and very quickly, he visualized a pathway of astral light, and hypnotized himself. His perception flowed along the astral light, heading towards the heavenly layers, and slowly, he arrived at the resplendent astral river. This time around, Qin Wentian's perception didn't stop, and directly headed towards the 5th heavenly layer. The immense pressure caused him to feel suffocated, as though his perception was about to shatter. He knew that the current him was still insufficient to condense an astral soul from the 6th heavenly layer, and could only choose from the 5th heavenly layer. The Berserk Ape constellation, condensing an astral soul from the Berserk Ape constellation, would grant one with terrifying strength and defense. The Lightning Transcendent constellation was condensed from an astral soul of the Lightning Reverend, and had the ability to control lightning and thunder. Qin Wentian's perception rapidly floated about. He saw a constellation the size of a giant, exuding a fearsome aura of thunder and lightning. This caused him to have the urge to form an innate link with it. As long as he could form an innate link with this constellation, the astral energy in his body would be imbued with the tyrannical aura of thunder and lightning, tempering his body with the power of thunder and lightning. The higher the level of the astral river, not only would the astral souls contain greater amounts of energy, there would also be some extraordinary astral souls. Suppressing the urge to form a connection with the Lightning Seigneur's constellation, Qin Wentian continued his search. His perception detected a strange constellation. This constellation seemed to be the silhouette of a person in slumber. With just a single glance, before Qin Wentian's perception could even connect to it, he felt a sense of drowsiness. After which, his perception was no longer under his control, as though he had fallen into a deep slumber. Sleeping astral soul. An idea appeared in Qin Wentian's mind. After which, his perception also entered a dreamlike state, completely involuntarily. In his dreams, his perception drifted towards the dreamlike constellation. In his dreams, he condensed his dreamlike astral soul, and in his dreams, he began to absorb the astral energy from the dreamlike constellation. This was an extremely long dream, or rather, it wasn't a dream. To Qin Wentian, this was reality. In his dreams, he began to use yuan meteor stones to communicate with the tiny astral being in his sea of consciousness. The tiny astral being greedily absorbed the astral energy, as though there was no end to it. Beside the tiny astral being, there were 2 astral gates, each of which was occupied by an astral soul. Finally, Qin Wentian's perception was sucked into the tiny astral being. This time around, Qin Wentian didn't absorb the astral being's memories. Instead, he saw a magnificent scene. He saw an incomparably majestic sect. This sect seemed to be situated on top of a sacred mountain, towering into the skies, exuding a majestic aura, as though it wanted to contend against the heavens and earth. Qin Heavenly Divine Sect. In the airspace above the majestic sect, 4 gigantic words were inscribed on 4 stone pillars that pierced through the clouds. The words were filled with a tyrannical aura, and one could see how powerful the person who inscribed these words was. In front of this majestic sect, a group of experts appeared, standing proudly in the air. Resplendent halos radiated from their bodies, and their astral souls were something he had never seen before. In fact, their astral souls had already transformed into terrifying astral soul constellations, as though the entire world was their astral soul constellations. The impact of this scene to Qin Wentian was immense. He could feel how tiny and inconsequential he was. However, this group of terrifying experts was currently surrounding a middle-aged man. This middle-aged man's black hair danced wildly in the wind, his eyes gleaming with high spirits. Facing these experts, he exuded the aura of a monarch descending from the heavens. His entire body was enveloped by a resplendent light, as though he was the ruler of this world. Abruptly, the entire world transformed into a world of constellations. The middle-aged man, who was enveloped by the constellations, radiated boundless divine light. His palms trembled in the air, and with a single palm strike, the heavens and earth seemed to open up. The constellations in the sky crumbled apart as the middle-aged man punched out once more, containing a supreme might within. After which, Qin Wentian saw that the experts surrounding the middle-aged man all had looks of terror on their faces as their bodies directly crumbled apart, transforming into dust. How terrifying! That palm strike was akin to the might of the heavens, capable of destroying the constellations in the sky and wiping away all life. Qin Wentian couldn't sense how terrifying that aura was. He could only use his consciousness to observe, but even so, he could still see the chaotic currents of chaos destroying everything. But at this moment, an intense surge of chaotic currents of consciousness appeared, causing the scene before him to twist and distort before vanishing. Qin Wentian only felt his consciousness returning to the tiny astral being's world as memory fragments frenziedly flowed into his mind. After which, everything in front of him turned blurry as Qin Wentian's consciousness was ejected from the tiny astral being. Who? Qin Wentian breathed heavily. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the wretched countenance of Fatty. What are you doing? Qin Wentian's body trembled. Fatty grinned at him before moving his head away from Qin Wentian. Only now did Qin Wentian discover that he was still lying on the ground. Qin Wentian, you can really sleep. You slept for 3 whole days. Fatty inclined his head and stared at the sky as he spoke in a depressed tone. What made him even more depressed was that when Qin Wentian was sleeping, there were 9 silver needles inserted into his head. At the same time, the astral light from the 9 heavenly layers cascaded downwards. Not only that, even though he was beside Qin Wentian, he also felt like sleeping. Little rascal had already fallen asleep beside Qin Wentian. Chapter 44. Qin Wentian was dumbfounded. This sleep lasted for 3 days. Astral soul. Qin Wentian closed his eyes, and in his sea of consciousness, 2 astral gates opened up. The Heavenly Hammer Astral Soul and Great Dream Astral Soul sat within the astral gates, and beside them was the dimmed tiny astral being. Memories, there really are new memories. My head hurts. Qin Wentian shook his head, as more and more memories appeared in his sea of consciousness, as he slowly digested them. Heavenly Dipper Realm Cultivation Art, Dreamcast Art, This art can support me all the way to the heavenly dipper realm. The dreamcast art can be divided into 3 levels: shallow dream state, immersed dream state, and forgotten dream state. The shallow dream state is the slowest, and allows one to enter a simple state of slumber for cultivation. The immersed dream state allows one to enter a deep sleep state for cultivation, increasing the speed of cultivation. One can even create dreams, allowing others to enter the dreamscape. The forgotten dream state allows one to create dreams, allowing one to live in the dreamscape. One can even control life and death in the dreamscape. Qin Wentian gradually read through these memories, as his heart trembled. When he condensed his first astral soul, he was bestowed with the tempered thousand hammer refinement art, which was extremely suitable for cultivation in the body refinement realm. Now that he had condensed his second astral soul, the dreamcast art appeared in his memories. Similarly, this cultivation art was completely compatible with his astral soul, as though the tiny astral being was purposefully transmitting these memories to him. And this time around, not only were there the memories of the dreamcast art, there was also another vast set of memories, the spirit refinement method. The spirit refinement method was also a set of cultivation arts, but it wasn't a cultivation art used to raise one's cultivation level, but rather, it was an extremely fearsome cultivation art used to condense astral energy. According to the information in the vast set of memories, the first level of the spirit refinement method required one to use first-level divine imprints to condense astral energy, transforming it into divine yuan energy. Using divine imprints to condense astral energy, Qin Wentian would never have dared to imagine that such a fearsome cultivation art existed. Divine imprints were considered supreme treasures in the world of weaponsmiths. A first-level divine imprint could be used to forge divine weapons. For example, a first-level flying sword divine imprint could be inscribed onto a weapon, granting it an aura of sharpness, and amplifying its strength. For example, if the astral energy in one's body was condensed from first-level divine imprints, then when the boundless true yuan was released at the same time, it would be equivalent to many first-level divine imprints exploding at the same time. If he were to use the power of his innate abilities to release these divine inscriptions, how terrifying would that be? Just imagining it made one's blood boil. However, the spirit refinement method was extremely difficult to cultivate. If one wanted to condense astral energy into divine imprints, not only would one need to expend a vast amount of astral energy, one would also need to have a high level of comprehension towards divine imprints. Not only that, this method of condensing divine energy would definitely be extremely time-consuming. Another point was that when stellar martial cultivators cultivated, they would need to expend their true yuan energy in combat. This meant that the divine yuan energy that they had spent a long time to condense would be depleted in the event of a battle. One could imagine, if one wanted to cultivate the spirit refinement method, they would need a huge amount of yuan meteor stones as well as a lot of time to support themselves. Only then would they be able to persist until they could condense the first level of divine yuan energy in an instant. Phew. Qin Wentian slowly digested these memories and took a deep breath. Difficult, this spirit refinement method was too difficult. The dreamcast art could increase one's cultivation speed, but the spirit refinement method could slow down one's cultivation speed to its slowest. That arrogant middle-aged man from the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect, he must have cultivated the spirit refinement method. Qin Wentian silently mused as he recalled the shocking scene in the video. Also, why would the Qin Heavenly Divine Sect appear in the tiny astral being? What relationship did that middle-aged man have with him? Old fogey, what secret did you leave behind? Qin Wentian really wanted to ask Uncle Black about it. Sadly, after the incident at the Qin residence, Sister Yao said that Uncle Black had disappeared. Fan Le waved his hand in front of Qin Wentian's eyes, causing Qin Wentian to glare at him. Are you sick? Fatty asked with a straight face. This guy couldn't have slept so much that he became stupid, right? Qin Wentian's brows twitched as a smile appeared on his face. Momentarily, Fatty shivered as he retreated 2 steps back. Boss, I'm just worried that something might have happened to you. I don't mean anything else. Evidently, Fatty still had a lingering fear in his heart from the beating he received previously. How about we return to the Emperor's Star Academy tomorrow? Qin Wendian asked Fatty. Fatty's eyes brightened as a wretched smile appeared on his face. He winked at Qin Wendian, his meaning clear. Was he finally going to the Emperor's Star Academy? He was filled with anticipation. Qin Wendian had already broken through to the arterial circulation realm. With his berserk astral soul, it shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with Orphan. As he thought of this, a cold glint of light flashed in Fatty's eyes. Master. At this moment, Francis walked over with a smile on his face. What's the matter? Qin Wendian asked Francis. Good news. Today, the Divine Weapon Pavilion auctioned off a divine weapon forged by Master. Because of the publicity, it attracted many people from the royal capital. Not only that, there were some powerful characters who tried to probe the divine weapon and discovered that not only did the divine weapon possess an amplification effect, it could also store true yuan within a short period of time. Many people participated in the auction. Can you guess how much this second-level divine weapon was sold for? Francis was extremely excited. He was indeed very happy. It seemed like he didn't follow the wrong person. If he continued to stay in the Star River Association, unless he was angered by Murin, he wouldn't be able to do anything for the rest of his life. What's the price? Qin Wendian was extremely curious. 15 second-level yuan meteor stones. Francis laughed. For an ordinary second-level divine weapon, 1 yuan meteor stone is sufficient. Not only that, this is the first auction and it has already caused such a huge commotion. After this auction, it will definitely attract even more people, including some weaponsmiths who wish to research divine imprints. Qin Wendian laughed. If he was the one selling the divine weapons, it would definitely not have such an effect. In the future, when his comprehension towards divine imprints deepened, he would be able to inscribe even higher quality divine weapons, and the yuan meteor stones he obtained would be sufficient to support him in his cultivation of the spiritual refinement method. Master, these are the yuan meteor stones. The divine weapon pavilion gave me 8 of them. Francis smiled as he passed the yuan meteor stones to Qin Wendian. Emicham, keep these 2 for yourself. In the future when I'm free, I will come here again to forge divine weapons. You should also focus on comprehending the divine imprints, and don't neglect your cultivation. Qin Wendian left 2 yuan meteor stones for Francis. Many thanks, Master. You can go now. Qin Wendian dismissed Francis as he continued his cultivation of the dragon's subduing fist, and at the same time, slowly comprehending the spiritual refinement method as well as the dreamcast art. The spiritual refinement method wasn't something that could be completed in a single day. However, Qin Wendian was able to enter the first level of the dreamcast art, the shallow dreamscape. That night, he cultivated in his sleep. On top of 2 constellations in the 5th heavenly layer, the astral light from the constellations cascaded down onto the sleeping Qin Wendian. Cultivating in his sleep caused Fatty to be dumbfounded. One could really cultivate in their sleep. Fatty was so envious. Early the next morning, Qin Wendian and Fan Lu bade farewell to Francis, borrowed 2 horses, and after asking for directions, they set off towards the Emperor's Star Academy. Upon arriving at the Emperor's Star Academy, Qin Wendian discovered that there were many people like them, who were all heading towards the entrance of the Emperor's Star Academy. Why is it so lively? Qin Wendian curiously asked. Could it be because they knew that I would return? Fan Lu grinned. Qin Wendian rolled his eyes. He was still thinking about how to enter the Emperor's Star Academy and contact senior sister Luo Huan to obtain the Emperor's Star Jade Medallion. Who would have thought that the Emperor's Star Academy would open its doors today? Which academy are you guys from? A young lady with braids smiled at Qin Wendian as she asked. Emperor's Star Academy. What about you? Qin Wendian replied. Students from the Emperor's Star Academy, you're really awesome. I'm currently cultivating in the Scarlet Flame Martial Palace. Today is the last day of the ranking battle, and since the Emperor's Star Academy didn't forbid the other academies from participating in the Emperor's Star Academy's ranking battle, I wanted to personally witness the strength of the outstanding students from the Emperor's Star Academy to motivate myself. I should still be able to make it in time for the battles. The young lady smiled as she continued, "It's rare for me to come here, so I have to hurry up and take a look. I'll take my leave first." After which, the young lady quickened her steps as she waved her hands at the two of them. Qin Wentian and Fan Lu exchanged glances as smiles broke out on their faces. The two of them quickly followed the crowd, and not long after, they arrived at the central training grounds of the Emperor's Star Academy. Many people were gathered together, spectating the battles taking place on the training grounds. Murong Feng, the undisputed top ranker of this batch of students from the Emperor's Star Academy. His talent is comparable to the 10 prodigies of the royal capital, and he's already at the 4th level of the arterial circulation realm at the age of 16. Not only that, he also condensed 2 astral souls. His potential is extremely high. On the platform, a silhouette of a youthful youth appeared. After defeating his opponent with a single strike, he appeared incomparably calm. To him, this was merely a formality. The #1 academy in the Chu country is the cradle of geniuses. Every year, there would be geniuses with great potential. Other than Murong Feng, Lin Xiu, and Du Hao are both at the 3rd level of the arterial circulation realm. Not only that, there are also 3 at the 2nd level of the arterial circulation realm. This batch of students is much stronger compared to the previous batch. The crowd discussed, causing Qin Wentian to silently muse that the Emperor's Star Academy was indeed a place of many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. TSK, it seems like I, the #1 genius, still have to work hard to prove myself. Fan Lu laughed in a low voice as he glanced at Qin Wentian beside him. Don't worry, your first astral soul was condensed from an astral soul from the 3rd heavenly layer. You should be the same as this genius, not cultivating the Yuan Qi of heaven and earth. You only started cultivating after you awakened your astral soul. That's why you started so late. Orphan went up. Qin Wentian didn't bother with Fan Li's words. His eyes flickered with a cold light as he stared at the silhouette of Orphan. He almost killed us, right? Fan Lu narrowed his eyes as he asked. Yes. Qin Wentian nodded his head. Do something big? Fan Li's eyes narrowed into slits. What do you want to do? Qin Wentian asked. Do it to death. Fan Lu grinned. Right. Qin Wentian nodded his head. The two of them exchanged glances as radiant smiles appeared on their faces. Chapter 45. Orphan's strength was definitely ranked within the top 10 in this batch of students. For this batch of students, Murong Feng was at the 4th level of arterial circulation, Lin Xiu and Du Hao were at the 3rd level, and the remaining 3 were at the 2nd level. One of them was Orphan. For this round, Orphan's opponent was at the 1st level of arterial circulation. Due to the disparity in their strength, Orphan's frenzied serpent spear technique quickly defeated his opponent. Upon witnessing this scene, Janus had a faint smile on his face as he stated, Orphan's spear technique has the agility of a serpent, as well as the tyranny of a python. He has already comprehended the essence of this innate technique. After this battle, he will definitely be ranked within the top 10. Right, Orphan didn't disappoint me. Orkan, who was at the side, indifferently nodded his head. Everything was within his expectations. On the other side, Mustang's countenance was extremely unsightly to behold. This was because they had different standpoints. In the Emperor's Star Academy, he and Janus had always been in opposition to each other. Their students were the same as well, and for every batch of new students, he, Janus, and a few other teachers would choose their students. More accurately speaking, it was the students who chose their teachers. Orphan was obviously a student under Janus's faction, and he, Mustang, originally had high hopes for Qin Wentian. But now, Qin Wentian had already been missing for more than 10 days. No matter how I look at this Orphan, I still feel uncomfortable. Junior brother Qin is more honest and more pleasing to the eye. Luo Huan's beautiful eyes stared at the complacent Orphan on the platform, her countenance somewhat unsightly. Orphan, who was on the platform, turned and prepared to leave. However, at this moment, a voice abruptly rang out. Powerful, truly powerful. A teasing voice rang out, and the spectators saw a fat silhouette walking up the platform. Upon seeing this fatty, Orphan's eyes instantly narrowed, as a cold light flickered within. How was this possible? He was actually still alive. Why are you here? Orphan spat out in a low voice. After stepping into the illusionary city, he was actually able to walk out? Why wouldn't I appear? Fan Lu laughed as he looked at Orphan. Momentarily, Orphan seemed to have realized something, and immediately shut his mouth, as though he didn't know who Fan Lu was. Long time no see. Another voice drifted over, and Orphan saw a familiar silhouette, Qin Wentian. Junior brother Qin. Mountain, who was in the spectator stands, saw Qin Wentian standing up with a simple and honest smile on his face. Luo Huan's beautiful eyes also flashed with a strange light as she laughed in a low voice, I knew you wouldn't die so easily. A white silhouette flickered and instantly leapt into Luo Huan's embrace. Under the gazes of countless envious gazes, little rascal's body lay on top of Luo Huan's softness, causing countless people to be filled with envy. When Mustang saw Qin Wentian, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. This fellow actually dared to directly walk up to the arena. The spectators all had puzzled expressions on their faces when they saw Qin Wentian and Fan Lu. Who were these two who had suddenly appeared? Qin Wentian and Fan Lu slowly walked towards Orphan. Orphan retreated repeatedly, as though he was extremely afraid of the two of them. After all, he had personally witnessed what Fan Lu and Qin Wentian had done in the dark forest. Mu Yi had been pierced to death by an arrow in the air. Impudent! Who are you? How dare you cause trouble here? Janice abruptly shouted, his gaze sweeping over to Qin Wentian and Fan Lu. At this moment, it was as though he didn't know Qin Wentian at all. A student from the Emperor Star Academy, Qin Wentian. A student from the Emperor Star Academy, Fan Lu. Is that so? Why did you only appear today? Janice sneered. Because of some matters, I was delayed. That's why I'm a little late. Fan Lu smiled. Do you think we can delay just because you say so? This is the Emperor Star Academy, not a place for you to behave atrociously. Scram! Janice coldly snorted, as a cold glint of light flickered in his eyes. Qin Wentian and Fan Lu turned their gazes onto Janice, laughing coldly in their hearts. Elder Janice, I'd like to ask if I can become an official student of the 9 great academies if I pass the initial test, and survive the training grounds of the Dark Forest? Fan Lu smiled as he asked Janice. Yes. Janice had no way to refute. This was something that everyone knew. When I participated in the initial test, it was Elder Janice who personally supervised me. There were also many witnesses who testified that I entered the training grounds of the Dark Forest. Now that I've survived, Elder Janice shouldn't doubt my identity as an official student of the Emperor Star Academy, right? Fan Lu laughed. Even if that's the case, so what? Janice coldly snorted, today, my Emperor Star Academy, stop. Before Janice could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Fan Lu. Fatty slowly inclined his head, staring at Janice as he grinned, since that's the case, why are you still farting? As the sound of Fan Li's voice faded, the entire space abruptly turned silent. The gazes of everyone were fixated on Fan Lu. The arrogant Fatty lifted his head, as he smiled radiantly at Janice. Fatty's temper wasn't very good. Although he was always smiling, he was almost killed by someone in the dark forest. What was even more despicable was that Orkan, in front of everyone, had shot him with a spear. That spear strike had caused Fatty to lose face. Astral light flashed as an astral bow appeared in Fatty's hands. In an instant, he pierced through the air, shooting towards the void. The crowd inclined their heads as they stared at the arrow shooting towards the sky, with expressions of bewilderment on their faces. However, very quickly, they discovered that the arrow was descending downwards, aiming directly at Orphan's back. It was as though Orphan's path of retreat had been sealed. At the instant Fatty took out the arrow, Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered. Boom! The entire training grounds trembled. Qin Wentian's silhouette was akin to a tyrannical hurricane, as he lunged towards Orphan. The rumbling sounds of the earth trembling unceasingly rang out, as though there was a rhythm to it. This sudden scene caused the spectators to have no time to react. It was too sudden. Fan Le had just finished scolding Janice, and right after that, Qin Wentian and Fan Le attacked Orphan in front of everyone, in the midst of the Emperor's Star Academy's ranking battle. Orphan's countenance instantly turned unsightly to behold. He wanted to retreat, but his path of retreat was completely sealed off by the arrow. He understood how profound Fan Le's archery was. Since Fan Le wanted to seal off his path of retreat, there was no need for him to think about retreating. He could only advance forward. As long as he defeated Qin Wentian, Janice and Orphan would definitely not allow Qin Wentian and Fan Le to act so atrociously. Qin Wentian and Fan Le only needed this instant to deal with him. As he thought of this, Orphan turned and dashed towards Qin Wentian, not retreating but advancing instead. The frenzied serpent spear abruptly pierced out, resembling an incomparably savage python, wanting to pierce through Qin Wentian's body. Qin Wentian, who was madly dashing towards Orphan, borrowed the momentum of the dragon's subduing fists and punched out. The tyrannical might of the dragon's subduing fists was fully displayed at this moment. An azure dragon howled in rage as it lunged towards Orphan's frenzied serpent spear technique. Peng, peng. The astral spear in Orphan's hands crumbled inch by inch. Feeling the tyrannical might of the dragon's roar, Orphan's countenance instantly paled. It was as though his face was about to be torn apart by the tyrannical force of the dragon's roar. Arterial circulation realm. Orphan's heart trembled. The aura radiating from Qin Wentian indicated that he was at the arterial circulation realm. Not only that, how could his attack be so tyrannical? His body retreated as he condensed an astral shield. Roar! A deafening roar reverberated through the air. The gazes of the spectators were fixated on the arena. They only saw the sharp claws of an azure dragon appearing, directly shattering the astral shield into smithereens. Following which, the claws abruptly grabbed onto Orphan's neck. In the next instant, they saw Qin Wentian's palms clasping onto Orphan's neck, lifting him up into the air. Impudent! Release him! Enraged shouts rang out as Orphan and the other two youths instantly appeared at the edge of the arena. A wild and unrestrained aura gushed forth as they lunged towards Qin Wentian. This was especially so for Orphan. The long spear in his hands was pointed towards Qin Wentian as killing intent gushed forth from him. You're courting death. Orphan coldly stared at Qin Wentian, as though he was looking at a dead man. Qin Wentian hated this kind of gaze. Just like back then in the dark forest, this gaze made him feel extremely uncomfortable. Hence, with a violent jerk of his arm, Orphan's body was directly smashed into the ground. The sound of bones shattering rang out, accompanied by a miserable shriek. Orphan's countenance instantly turned ashen. Qin Wentian had actually abused his younger brother in front of him. This was no longer something that could be described with the word face-slapping. He had never been slapped in such a manner before. His face was burning hot, and his killing intent surged forth violently, wanting to dismember Qin Wentian into 1,000 pieces. Even Mustang and the rest were stunned by this sudden scene. Only after a while did they regain their senses. Many thoughts flashed through Mustang's mind, as a brilliant light flickered in his eyes. This fellow is indeed an honest man. If he isn't honest, he's not human. Luo Huan's beautiful eyes flashed with a seductive smile. Qin Wentian usually appeared harmless, but if he was angered, he would explode, just like now. However, she liked it. Chapter 46. The teachers of the Emperor's Star Academy were all shaken. They stood up, their countenances extremely unsightly as they stared at the scene on the stage. Today was the last day of the ranking battle, and there were many students from the outer academy who came to spectate. But today, on the stage, there were actually 2 students who wanted to kill Orphan. In the history of the Emperor's Star Academy, such a brazen act had never happened before. As expected of students from the Emperor's Star Academy, not a single one of them would know their place. Some of the teachers from the outer academy had smiles on their faces as they witnessed this scene. Geniuses were always arrogant, especially when a group of geniuses were gathered in the same place. It was inevitable that they would clash with each other. The Emperor's Star Academy was known as the cradle of geniuses in the Chu country. Many of the students there were arrogant and untamed, and were the most difficult to tame. Hence, the teachers of the Emperor's Star Academy were all extremely powerful. On the spectator stands, there were also many old students like Luo Huan and Orkan. Their lips curled into a faint smile as they silently mused, "Interesting, the Emperor's Star Academy has another troublemaker. And this time around, there were 2 of them. I wonder if their strength is as great as their guts." Janice walked down the stage step by step, staring at Qin Wentian as he coldly stated, "In the history of the Emperor's Star Academy, there has never been such an impudent student. Now, there is." Qin Wentian stared at Janice as he coldly replied, "There has to be someone who can lead the way." Fan Lu grinned. At this moment, he had also walked to the side of Qin Wentian. Staring at Orphan's enraged eyes, Fatty accidentally placed his foot on Orphan's palm and twisted it, causing Orphan to howl in agony. The pain from his palm caused him to grit his teeth in anger. Fatty lowered his head, looking at Orphan apologetically as he smiled, "Sorry, I didn't see it." Although this was what he said, the force of Fatty's foot increased, causing Orphan's screams to become even more shrill. The spectators all rolled their eyes. This fellow was so shameless. "Do you see it now?" Killing intent gushed forth from Orkan's body as he slowly approached Orphan. Fatty stared at Orkan as he increased the force of his foot, causing tears to flow from Orphan's eyes. "I saw it, but I didn't move my eyes away." Fatty grinned at Orkan. He would never forget the look of contempt in Orkan's eyes that day. Fatty was very vengeful. "Stop." Qin Wentian coldly spat out. In his hands, the astral heavenly hammer gleamed with a resplendent light as it smashed down towards Orphan's head. As long as this hammer smashed down, Orphan would instantly lose his life. Janice, Orkan, and the rest stopped in their tracks. Since they had met 2 lunatics, even if they were infuriated, they had no choice but to endure. "What do you want?" Janice stared at the 2 of them as he asked. This was the first time he felt so aggrieved in front of these 2 students. As long as he could rescue Orphan, he would definitely make sure that Qin Wentian and Fan Lu would die a horrible death. "You'll have to ask my boss about that. I'm very low-key." Fatty smiled and threw the question to Qin Wentian. The crowd rolled their eyes when they heard what he said. Fatty was really very low-key. Fan Lu was extremely angry about what happened in the dark forest. Hence, he didn't hold back and chose to seek revenge. However, in his heart, Fan Lu was very clear that the source of this matter was none other than Qin Wentian. He and Qin Wentian stood shoulder to shoulder on the stage, facing the storm together. However, he had also handed the final decision to Qin Wentian. Fatty was very low-key, but he wasn't cowardly at all. Since he was standing here, it meant that no matter what decision Qin Wentian made, he would have to bear the consequences together with Qin Wentian. Shameless Fatty, but he's actually very loyal. How intelligent was Luo Huan? Her beautiful eyes shone with a brilliant light. She discovered that although she had just met this Fatty, she also liked this low-key and shameless Fatty the same way she liked Qin Wentian. "Fatty, if we spare Orphan, do you think Orkan will apologize to us and let us go?" Qin Wentian laughed as he gazed at Fan Lu. "He won't." Fan Lu shook his head. "Back in the dark forest, he already wanted our lives. Now, I'm afraid he wants us even more. Even if we kneel down and beg for mercy, the result would still be the same. Seems like it. Qin Wentian mumbled, his words causing the countenances of Janice and Orkhan to turn even more unsightly. From their conversation, it seemed as though they had completely disregarded them, and had no intentions of letting Orphan off. Qin Wentian shifted his gaze towards Mustang, who was also walking up the stage. Smiling, he asked, "Teacher Mustang, I have a few questions I'd like to consult you on." "Go ahead." Mustang replied. "If you have no grudges with someone, but someone wants to kill you, and in addition, almost succeeded several times, what would you do if that person landed in your hands?" Qin Wentian asked. "I'd kill him." Mustang replied. "His clan is extremely powerful." Qin Wentian asked again. "I won't kill him. His clan is still extremely powerful." Mustang replied. "Mustang!" Janice roared in rage. Who were these people? How could the crowd not understand the meaning behind their conversation? Mustang was instigating Qin Wentian. At this moment, the crowd understood that Orphan definitely wanted to kill Qin Wentian and Fan Lo. Hence, they didn't care about the consequences, directly walking up the stage and trampling Orphan beneath their feet. They even dared to challenge the prestige of the Emperor's Star Academy. Before this, when Qin Wentian and Fan Lu were discussing how to deal with Orphan, both of them came to an agreement. Regardless of whether they killed Orphan or not, the result would be the same. Hence, the conclusion they came to was, kill. Now, the meaning behind the conversation between Qin Wentian and Mustang was even more thought-provoking. Qin Wentian was asking for Mustang's opinion. Naturally, he used a veiled tone to ask for Mustang's opinion, but everyone could hear it clearly. Regardless of whether they killed Orphan or not, the power of the O clan was there for all to see. They would definitely deal with Qin Wentian. There was no doubt about this. Hence, whether they killed Orphan or not, to Qin Wentian, there was no difference. Mustang, the ironclad rule of the Emperor's Star Academy forbids students from engaging in life and death battles within the academy grounds. You should know the consequences of violating this rule. Janice's tone was filled with an intense coldness. Mustang actually dared to express his stance in public, hinting at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian. Mustang stared at Qin Wentian as he continued, "In the history of the Emperor's Star Academy, there have been 3 cases where students killed others within the academy grounds. One of them, the student who killed the other was executed on the spot. Another time, the student who killed the other was imprisoned in a forbidden area for a total of 50 years. After which, he swore that he would never step out of the Emperor's Star Academy, and that he was willing to take up a position within the academy." Mustang's words caused the countenances of the crowd to turn solemn. The ironclad rule of the Emperor's Star Academy was simply too strict. Within the academy grounds, no one was allowed to kill anyone. If not, the consequences would be extremely severe. Because of the existence of the ironclad rule, nobody dared to act recklessly within the academy grounds. What about the other time? Qin Wentian stared at Mustang as he asked. If that was really a path to death, then what was the meaning of the conversation he had with Mustang earlier? The other time, the student who killed the other is currently the headmaster of the Emperor's Star Academy. Mustang's calm voice caused the atmosphere to abruptly turn silent. They all knew how strict the ironclad rule of the Emperor's Star Academy was, especially when it came to killing fellow students within the academy grounds. However, very few people knew of this history. The current headmaster of the Emperor's Star Academy was one of the students who had violated the ironclad rule. Qin Wentian stared into Mustang's eyes. He didn't ask why, because he already understood. 3 students, 3 completely different fates. One died, one worked for the Emperor's Star Academy, and one became the headmaster of the Emperor's Star Academy. 3 different fates, because the value of the 3 of them to the Emperor's Star Academy was completely different. The students of the Emperor's Star Academy were all thorns. They came from all over the Emperor's Star Academy, and all of them had extraordinary talent. The Emperor's Star Academy had never cared about how thorny you were, or how arrogant you were. What they cared about was whether you had the capital to be thorny, and whether you had the capital to be arrogant. Geniuses were arrogant, self-confidence, and arrogance. Mediocre people were arrogant, conceited, and foolish. In this world, other than blood relatives, no one owed anyone anything. If you wanted others to do something for you, you had to first prove what you could give to them. Qin Wentian had already understood this logic when he was at the Star River Association in the Sky Harmony City. He didn't agree to Murin's conditions, which was why Murin chose to betray him in exchange for the benefits of the Yi clan. This was reality. It was extremely naked. And now, he, Qin Wentian, was once again faced with a choice. Regardless of whether he killed Orphan or not, the O clan and Orkhan would still want Qin Wentian dead. Hence, there was no need to consider them. The only thing Qin Wentian needed to consider was the attitude of the Emperor's Star Academy. Qin Wentian inclined his head, as he stared at Orkhan. A radiant smile could be seen on his face, as though there was already an answer in his clear eyes. In the Sky Harmony City, he and the Qin clan were forced into such a miserable state by the Yi clan. In the royal capital of Chu, Janus made things difficult for him, and Orphan wanted to kill him. In front of him, there was the Yi clan, the O clan, and even the most terrifying power in Chu, the royal clan. This time around, if he chose to endure and let Orphan off, the Yi clan and the O clan would only scorn him for his cowardice. In the royal capital of Chu, the answer was very simple. Hence, to him, the answer was actually very simple. Chapter 47. The gazes of countless people landed on Qin Wentian. What decision would he make? Bzzz. The long spear in Orkhan's hands shimmered with a terrifying light, as waves of killing intent gushed forth unabashedly. Looking at the smile on Qin Wentian's face, Orkhan had a bad premonition. Qin Wentian really dared to make a move. Release him. Orkhan's voice was filled with a terrifying coldness. Looking at that cold countenance, Qin Wentian was exceptionally calm. Even at this moment, you still haven't put down that arrogance of yours. Just like before, you stare at me with that gaze. Most probably, you don't care about his death at all. As he spoke, Qin Wentian's fists shimmered with a brilliant light. At this moment, the hearts of the spectators all tensed up. If you make a move, I can guarantee that you won't become the third. Only the first will be your final resting place. Janus stared at Qin Wentian. The third person had become the headmaster of the Emperor's Star Academy, while the first person had been killed by the Emperor's Star Academy. If I'm only the first, then in this vast royal capital, if I don't kill him, there will be no place for me to live. The smile on Qin Wentian's face remained unchanged. The first person meant that he didn't have much value to the Emperor's Star Academy. If that was the case, how could he establish a foothold in the royal capital? Lowering his head, Qin Wentian stared at Orphan. Orphan stared back at him, and when he saw the look in Qin Wentian's eyes, Orphan felt true fear. Your life is in my hands, yet no one is willing to lower their heads for you. The person you should hate, isn't me. Qin Wentian calmly stated, causing Orphan's body to tremble. Qin Wentian's words were akin to an announcement of his death. That's right, he had tried to take Qin Wentian's life several times, and Qin Wentian's desire to kill him was within his expectations. However, his elder brother, as well as Janus, none of them had lowered their heads to plead for him. This caused him to feel a wave of sorrow. He had once worshipped the arrogance of his elder brother. But at this moment, when this arrogance was used on Qin Wentian, it actually caused him, Orphan, to lose his life. Qin Wentian raised his arm and punched out with the dragon's subduing fists. The roar of a dragon rang out as an azure dragon lunged towards Orphan's head. I hate it. Orphan let out an enraged roar of despair. After which, a thunderous boom rang out as his body exploded into pieces. Only that roar of unwillingness remained, reverberating through the air for a long time. The entire space became even quieter, so much so that one could hear a pin drop. Qin Wentian became the fourth person in the history of the Emperor's Star Academy. The fourth person who dared to kill another student within the academy grounds. Mustang, Luo Huan, and the rest felt their hearts pounding. Killed, Qin Wentian had killed Orphan on the spot. The spectators below also drew in a deep breath. The Emperor's Star Academy had produced two madmen. Orphan's eyes flashed with an extreme coldness. He advanced towards Qin Wentian, as killing intent gushed forth from his body. Orphan! Janice called out, causing Orphan to halt his steps. He wanted nothing more than to pierce through Qin Wentian's head with his spear. However, Qin Wentian had already violated the greatest taboo of the Emperor's Star Academy. Orphan couldn't become the fifth person to do so. If not, although he had avenged Orphan, his own life would be in an extremely difficult position. For those who violated the ironclad rules of the Emperor's Star Academy, the Academy would never look at their background. Killing a fellow student in the ranking battle of the Emperor's Star Academy? You are the first person who dared to challenge the prestige of the Emperor's Star Academy. Janice stared at Qin Wentian, as though he was looking at a dead man. I, Janice, in the name of an elder of the Emperor's Star Academy, request permission from the disciplinary committee to kill Qin Wentian on the spot, in order to avenge his brother Orphan. Janice's voice was cold. At this moment, silhouettes after silhouettes leapt onto the training grounds. These people were all disciples of the disciplinary committee, and as they stepped onto the training grounds, they instantly dashed towards Qin Wentian. Behind the crowd, a middle-aged man slowly walked up. Thousand Hands, the disciplinary elder of the disciplinary committee. He had the authority to make decisions within the Emperor's Star Academy. His gaze was emotionless as he glanced at Qin Wentian. During the training grounds of the Dark Forest, Orphan wanted to kill Qin Wentian several times. If not, the two of them wouldn't have come to the academy for revenge. I, Mustang, request for the disciplinary elder to be lenient with this punishment. As for Qin Wentian, I will personally accept him as my disciple. Mustang stepped forward, similarly stepping onto the training grounds. Janice wanted Qin Wentian to die, while Mustang wanted to protect Qin Wentian. Elder Thousand Hands, Mustang incited Qin Wentian to kill a fellow student, and now, he even dared to shield a murderer. I, Janice, request the disciplinary committee to convict Mustang of this crime. Janice took a step forward, opposing with equal harshness. The seniors of the Emperor's Star Academy all knew that Janice and Mustang had different standpoints, and were already like fire and water. Hence, they weren't surprised by the scene before them. But, how would the disciplinary committee handle this? Qin Wentian, you killed a fellow student during the ranking battle. Do you admit to this crime? Thousand Hands didn't bother with Janice and Mustang, only staring at Qin Wentian as he coldly asked. The members of the disciplinary committee had already surrounded Qin Wentian. Upon witnessing this scene, the hearts of the spectators trembled. It seemed like the disciplinary committee would not spare Qin Wentian. The matter of Orphan attempting to assassinate me in the Dark Forest, will the disciplinary committee pursue this matter? Qin Wentian stared at Thousand Hands as he asked. Nope. Thousand Hands straightforwardly replied. The disciplinary committee will not pursue this matter. Of course I want to avenge myself. What crime is there in that? Qin Wentian's voice was domineering. This fellow. Mountain, who was standing at the back, was dumbfounded. This Qin Wentian, how could he dare to talk back to the members of the disciplinary committee? I, Janice, once again request the disciplinary committee to allow Orphan to kill this brat personally, in order to avenge his brother. Janice spoke once more. Thousand Hands was silent for a moment, before he waved his hands. Momentarily, the members of the disciplinary committee stepped aside, leaving space for Orphan and Qin Wentian. Elder Thousand Hands, if the disciplinary committee agrees to Janice's request, I'm afraid that I will have to interfere. Mustang was extremely domineering as he took a step forward. "Mustang, you dare to interfere with the disciplinary committee?" Janus coldly laughed as he walked towards Mustang. Orkan, on the other hand, emitted a murderous aura as he advanced towards Qin Wentian. Not only that, the disciples of Janus and Mustang, with Qin Wentian in the center, stood in the middle of the martial arena, facing off against each other. This storm seemed to be getting more and more intense. And at this moment, in the heart of the storm, above Qin Wentian's head, astral light abruptly flashed as his astral soul appeared. Looking at the color of the astral soul, one could tell that it originated from the third heavenly layer. This scene caused the eyes of Thousand Hands to narrow. He wasn't acquainted with Qin Wentian, and thus, he didn't know that Qin Wentian's first astral soul originated from the third heavenly layer. The third heavenly layer? What kind of background does this person have? No wonder Mustang is so protective of him. Upon seeing Qin Wentian's astral soul, many in the crowd sighed in their hearts. This matter was getting more and more interesting. Most probably, the Emperor's Star Academy wouldn't allow a genius whose first astral soul originated from the third heavenly layer to perish. An expression of contemplation could be seen in Thousand Hands' eyes. This fellow was extremely prickly, but he did have the qualifications to be arrogant. He was considering how he should deal with Qin Wentian. "Orkan, do it." Janus spoke in a low voice. Immediately, Orkan dashed towards Qin Wentian, while at the same time, Janus stood in front of Mustang, wanting to prevent Mustang from assisting Qin Wentian. Mountain stepped out as he released his astral soul. His entire person was akin to a wall, blocking Qin Wentian's path. Punching out with his fist, it felt as though countless boulders were smashing towards Orkan. Scram! Orkan roared in rage. Resplendent astral light radiated from his long spear, causing numerous pythons to frenziedly wreak havoc. Boulders unceasingly exploded as his long spear penetrated through everything. Mountain's countenance sank as he was forced to retreat. Although Orkan was impudent, he was definitely a character amongst the students of the Emperor's Star Academy. Thousand Hands, he was still observing from the sidelines. At this moment, Qin Wentian was as calm as ever. Since he didn't want to be suppressed by the Yi and O clan in the royal capital, he might as well prove his worth by standing on the arena of the Emperor's Star Academy in front of everyone. An even more resplendent astral light radiated forth. Beside the heavenly hammer astral soul, Qin Wentian released his second astral soul, the Great Dream astral soul. Thousand Hands inclined his head as he gazed at the astral soul. In the next instant, his gaze froze. The color of this astral soul was crimson gold. The Great Dream astral soul was enveloped within a crimson gold halo. Thousand Hands was a Yuanfu realm cultivator, and was also the disciplinary elder of the Emperor's Star Academy. However, he had never imagined that there would be a day where he would be able to witness a crimson astral soul in the body of a 16-year-old youth. But today, he had witnessed it. Not only him, everyone else had witnessed it as well. When the Great Dream astral soul with a crimson gold halo was released, all the fighting and killing seemed to have lost all meaning to its existence. The gazes of everyone were all focused on that astral soul. Qin Wentian's countenance was as calm as ever, but the gazes in the eyes of the spectators were completely different. This type of astral soul should be from the fourth heavenly layer, right? His first astral soul was condensed from an astral soul from the third heavenly layer, while his second astral soul was condensed from an astral soul from the fourth heavenly layer. Qin Wentian had made history in the history of the Emperor's Star Academy, an unprecedented feat. Stop. In the skies above, a voice abruptly rang out, akin to the rumbling of thunder, jolting the spectators who were in a daze back to their senses. The pupils of Thousand Hands narrowed, as a look of reverence flashed in his eyes. After which, he commanded, "Everyone stop. Those who disobey will be punished by the disciplinary hall." Everyone halted their battles in that instant. Their gazes were fixated on Qin Wentian, their countenances exceptionally fascinating. This was especially so for Janus and Orkan. The expressions on their faces could be said to be extremely rich to the extreme. Silence, deathly silence. The young man who killed Orphan had become the focus of everyone's attention, becoming the main character of today's event. Chapter 48. After Qin Wentian condensed his great dream's astral soul, he used the acupuncture technique to suppress the radiance of the astral soul. However, this time around, he didn't suppress it by too much, only causing the golden red radiance to fade. Because he had already thought about it, with the influence of the Yi clan in the royal capital, if he didn't display sufficient talent to attract the attention of the higher-ups of the Emperor's Star Academy, it would be extremely difficult for him to establish a foothold in the royal capital. He also didn't directly release the fifth layer of heavenly light. If it was too heaven-defying, there would be some people who would pay any price to kill him. Hence, the current scene appeared. When I was in the Sky Harmony City, I had already passed Teacher Mustang's test. Because of the Emperor's Star Academy's promise, I traveled tens of thousands of miles to the royal capital to register. However, Janice didn't bestow me with the Emperor's Star Jade Medallion, and instead wanted me to participate in the joint gathering of the 9 academies. I agreed. In the silent space, Qin Wentian slowly spoke. No one would disturb him, and in the entire space, only his voice could be heard. During the joint gathering of the 9 academies, Orphan gathered the other students to hunt me and Fan Lu down. They almost succeeded, but because Fan Lu ignited the power of his bloodline limit, we were able to defeat Orphan. However, at that moment, Orkan appeared and said that Fan Lu and I had harmed a fellow student, and almost killed him on the spot. At that time, who in the Emperor's Star Academy would enforce the law for us? After that, Orphan once again roped in experts at the arterial circulation realm to hunt us down, forcing us into desperate straits. Luckily, we were lucky and only returned alive after 10 days. The first thing we thought of was to return to the Emperor's Star Academy to register, and when we saw Orphan, we were so enraged that we even tried to kill him. Let me ask you, what crime did we commit? Qin Wentian slowly recounted the events, and in addition to the talent he displayed, the crowd felt that Qin Wentian wasn't in the wrong. Not only that, according to Qin Wentian's words, not only was his talent extraordinary, that fatty Fan Lu actually had the power of a bloodline limit. If this was the case, the Emperor's Star Academy had no choice but to reconsider. If the Emperor's Star Academy still feels that I'm guilty, then please do not accuse me of being a student of the Emperor's Star Academy. I have yet to receive my Jade Medallion, and thus cannot be considered as a student of the Emperor's Star Academy. Killing Orphan, just treat it as me coming to the Emperor's Star Academy to take revenge. Qin Wentian's voice was still the same as before. Now, as for how to deal with this matter, I'll leave it up to you. As the sound of his voice faded, that dazzling astral soul vanished. However, the hearts of the crowd were still unable to calm down. It wasn't easy for me, Mustang, to obtain such a student. If the academy were to reject him and even punish him, there would be no meaning for me to be a teacher anymore. Mustang stared at Thousand Hands as he emotionlessly stated. Momentarily, all the pressure was concentrated on Thousand Hands, causing him to be in a difficult position. At this moment, he actually had no intention of convicting Qin Wentian. Otherwise, the higher-ups would probably blame him. He was afraid that there were higher-ups watching them now. Thinking of this, Thousand Hands couldn't help but feel depressed. If he didn't handle this matter well, there would be many people who would be unhappy with him. Naturally, the one who was the most depressed was none other than Janice. At the instant when Qin Wentian released his 2 astral souls, he already knew that Qin Wentian wouldn't die. Not only would he not die, he would even receive the attention of the higher-ups. And he, Janice, had offended a character with immense potential just like that. And there was also Orkan. He still hated Qin Wentian to the core, and wanted nothing more than to kill him on the spot. Although the cause of this matter was because of his relationship with Yi Wuke, and because of this, he wanted to help Yi Wuke resolve this small problem. To him, this wasn't something difficult at all. But who would have thought that it would result in such a situation? However, no one would think that they were in the wrong. Hence, the person he hated was Qin Wentian. His younger brother, Orphan, was killed by Qin Wentian on the spot. Not only that, even if Qin Wentian killed Orphan, it would still be a waste of effort. How could Orphan not be enraged? Impudent. At this moment, Thousand Hands finally opened his mouth. What caused everyone to be astonished was that he directly berated Qin Wentian. What a load of nonsense. Since you participated in the examination of the Emperor's Star Academy and survived the Dark Forest, how can you not be a student of the Academy? Thousand Hands berated Qin Wentian. The Emperor's Star Jade Medallion is merely a formality. Since you have already chosen to enroll in the Emperor's Star Academy, you are already a student of the Academy. Hence, I, Thousand Hands, as the disciplinary elder of the Emperor's Star Academy, have the authority to discipline you. Although you took revenge for yourself today, the consequences of your actions are too severe. I have decided to temporarily imprison you for a month. At the same time, I will send people to investigate the matter in the Dark Forest. If what you said is true, then I will treat this battle as a private battle between you and Orphan, and have nothing to do with the Academy. Naturally, if what you said is a lie, then I will. Thousand Hands seemed to have not thought of what he would do if Qin Wentian lied. He paused for a moment before adding, let's talk about it when the time comes. Come with me first. Puchi. Luo Huan laughed lightly, as she covered her mouth with her hands. A strange light flashed in her eyes. This was the first time she had seen the incorruptible and impartial elder Thousand Hands in such an awkward situation. Although Thousand Hands was berating Qin Wentian, everyone could hear the meaning behind his words. Regardless of whether Qin Wentian lied or not, Orphan had died for nothing. Not only that, Thousand Hands was obviously trying to drag Qin Wentian into the Emperor's Star Academy, saying that Qin Wentian was now a student of the Academy. Qin Wentian and Fan Lu exchanged glances, as traces of smiles could be seen in their eyes. Today, they had finally managed to vent their anger. However, the expression in Orphan's eyes was still as loathsome as ever. Fatty was thinking in his heart that if he could deal with Orphan in the same manner, it would be perfect. Naturally, Fatty was only thinking about it. Towards those he couldn't defeat, Fatty's principle had always been that a gentleman could wait 10 years for revenge. Towards those he could defeat, Fatty's principle was that a hero wouldn't wait overnight for revenge. Hence, towards Orphan, Fatty chose to be a hero. Towards Orphan, Fatty decided to be a gentleman. And you will also be confined as well. Reflect on your actions. Just when Fatty was fantasizing about being a hero or a gentleman, Thousand Hands berated him. However, Fatty didn't seem to care at all. Grinning, he patted Qin Wentian's shoulder. Good brothers, we will share hardships together. This is my brother, Qin Wentian. I, Fan Lu, will naturally accompany him. Fatty inclined his head, as though he was afraid that others wouldn't know that he and Qin Wentian were brothers. Shameless. This Fatty is too shameless. The spectators cursed in their hearts. This Fatty was simply showing off his strength. Naturally, only Qin Wentian knew that Fatty didn't know of Qin Wentian's talent when they were in the Dark Forest. Later on, when they were in danger, Fatty could have easily left by himself. However, Fatty didn't. Although Fatty was shameless, his shamelessness caused people to feel warmth in their hearts. The members of the disciplinary committee brought Qin Wentian and Fan Lu away. Mustang wasn't worried in the slightest. At the instant Qin Wentian released his astral blood astral soul, he already knew the outcome. Casting a glance at Janice, Mustang led his disciples away. The ranking battles continued, but the spectators were in no mood to continue. Their minds were still replaying the scenes from earlier. What happened in the Emperor's Star Academy today would soon spread to the other academies. His name is Qin Wentian. How handsome. Some of the girls had love-struck expressions on their faces, as they recalled the scene of that unbridled youth killing Orphan on the spot. After which, he unleashed his talent and became the #1 genius in the history of the Emperor's Star Academy. Orphan brought Orphan's corpse and left. He wanted to return to his clan, as news of what happened here would soon spread to his clan. Qin Wentian and Fan Lu were punished with confinement. However, they were confined in an extremely elegant courtyard with a small bridge over a flowing stream. This caused Fatty to sigh in admiration. Only a few beauties were missing, and the confinement would be perfect. Fatty was extremely happy, but at this moment, Thousand Hands was having a headache. At this moment, many people appeared in front of him, and all of them were elders of the academy. Elder Thousand Hands, I only wish to meet with Qin Wentian. This request isn't too overboard, right? At this moment, a tanned-looking tower-like man looked at Thousand Hands, requesting to meet with Qin Wentian. Thousand Hands, I guarantee that it won't take up too much of your time. I only want to have a casual chat with Qin Wentian. Another person smiled as he looked at Thousand Hands. Staring at the silhouettes in front of him, Thousand Hands felt a headache coming on. How could he not understand the thoughts of these people? Qin Wentian had yet to receive his Emperor's Star Jade Medallion, so naturally, he hadn't joined any of the academies yet. Although Mustang had already seized the initiative, they still had a chance to tempt him. You bunch of bastards. At this moment, an explosive voice rang out, causing the crowd to fall silent. Turning their heads, they saw Mustang's face turning black. The crowd couldn't help but feel embarrassed in their hearts when they saw Mustang. However, their faces were still as serious as ever. Today is the last day of the ranking battle, yet all of you are here. How are students supposed to choose their own teachers? Now, the vice headmaster is already enraged. Do as you see fit. Mustang coldly snorted. After Thousand Hands brought Qin Wentian away, Mustang quickly discovered that the other teachers of the Emperor's Star Academy had all slipped away. As the sound of Mustang's voice faded, the teachers of the Emperor's Star Academy all disappeared in the blink of an eye. Thousand Hands shook his head as a bitter smile appeared on his face. Gazing at Mustang, Thousand Hands stated, Mustang, the vice headmaster is enraged. You should quickly go as well. Mustang stared at Thousand Hands as he laughed. Before that, can Elder Thousand Hands allow me to meet with my disciple, Qin Wentian? I have something to tell him. Thousand Hands froze, as he contemplated Mustang. After which, he laughed, Mustang, the vice headmaster didn't even go, right? Mustang couldn't help but to smile awkwardly after being exposed, causing Thousand Hands to be dumbfounded. He glared at Mustang, you are ruthless. Go on in. Chapter 49. Upon noticing Mustang's arrival, Qin Wentian stood up to welcome him. With a smile in his eyes, he called out, Teacher Mustang. Sit. Mustang smiled at the silhouette in front of him. Today, Qin Wentian had given him a huge surprise. Qin Wentian, your guts aren't small. You actually dared to kill Orphan in front of so many people. Mustang stared at Qin Wentian as he continued, the O clan is one of the most influential clans in the royal capital. Since you killed Orphan, I'm afraid they will definitely remember you. Teacher Mustang, didn't you tell me that regardless of whether I killed Orphan or not, the power of the O clan would still be there? Qin Wentian smiled as he replied. Ever since Orphan started hunting him down in the dark forest, there was no longer any leeway for reconciliation. Qin Wentian obviously didn't think that just because he had spared Orphan, the other party would be grateful to him and not make things difficult for him anymore. Although that's the case, if it weren't for the talent you revealed later on, I'm afraid that you would have been in grave danger. Luckily, everything has temporarily passed. The Emperor's Star Academy will give you sufficient attention. Regardless of whether it's the Yi clan or the O clan, if they want to deal with you, they will have to consider the attitude of the Emperor's Star Academy first. Mustang smiled as he continued, naturally, your personal strength is the most important. After all, it's easy to dodge a spear in the open, but hard to guard against an arrow in the dark. If they want to kill someone, there are too many methods they can use. They can even leave no traces behind, making it impossible for others to trace back to them. Hence, you have to raise your cultivation as soon as possible, and at the same time, be careful when you leave the academy. Understood. Qin Wentian nodded his head. Oh yeah, I came here because I wanted to tell you about the current situation of the Emperor Star Academy. The history of the Emperor Star Academy is even longer than the Chu country. Its founder was the Azure Emperor. It's said that 3,000 years ago, there were only a few stellar martial cultivators here. Hence, the Azure Emperor established the Emperor Star Academy in an attempt to usher in the era of stellar martial cultivators. Mustang slowly continued. Currently, the Emperor Star Academy is composed entirely of stellar martial cultivators. There's a headmaster, 3 vice-headmasters, 9 honorary elders, 36 elders, and an unknown number of guest elders. As for the rest, they are all students. Students of the Emperor Star Academy can only officially apply to graduate after they have stepped into Yuanfu. Hence, although the academy only accepts a few hundred students every batch, the vast majority of students require a long period of time before they can step into Yuanfu. Currently, the number of students in the Emperor Star Academy exceeds 3,000, and their teachers are the 36 elders as well as the guest elders. The guest elders are all students who have already stepped into Yuanfu. Even the guest elders are at the Yuanfu realm? Qin Wentian exclaimed in shock. The strength of the Emperor Star Academy was truly terrifying. These guest elders are actually the disciples of the 36 elders. After they step into Yuanfu, they can apply to graduate. However, there are some who are willing to remain in the Emperor Star Academy to continue their cultivation, and they will be given the position of guest elders to assist their teachers in guiding the students. After all, for every batch of new students, only the top 30 have the right to choose their teachers, and they can directly enter the tutelage of an elder. As for the others, they will be guided by the guest elders under the tutelage of the elders. Of course, don't underestimate the strength of the guest elders. Some of the guest elders have already surpassed their teachers. Mustang smiled as he introduced. Qin Wentian and Fan Lu both understood. In the future, if senior sister Luo Huan or senior brother Mountain stepped into Yuanfu and were willing to stay in the Emperor Star Academy, they would become the guest elders under Mustang. For this year's batch, I have yet to accept any disciples. Are the two of you willing? Mustang stared at Qin Wentian and Fan Lu, finally revealing the reason for his visit. Qin Wentian nodded his head. The reason why he came to the Emperor Star Academy was because of Mustang. Naturally, he would become Mustang's disciple. However, at this moment, Qin Wentian's eyes flickered as he laughed mischievously. Boss, there are 36 elders in the academy. I'm sure many of them would want to accept you as their disciple. Why don't we wait and see first? Mustang froze when he heard Fan Li's words. Looking at the shameless expression on Fatty's face, he really wanted to give him a good beating. This shameless fellow actually dared to openly ask for a disciple gift? How arrogant! Turning his head, Mustang saw that Qin Wentian was also smiling at him. Instantly, his hatred for Fatty intensified. Reaching into his robes, Mustang retrieved 2 secret manuals and passed them to Qin Wentian. This is a cultivation art and an innate technique. The cultivation art is at the high grade of Yuanfu, sufficient to support you all the way to Yuanfu. As for the innate technique, it's at the mid-grade of Earth grade. Usually, only Yuanfu cultivators would be able to unleash the full power of the innate technique. The cultivation art was divided according to cultivation level. The Yuanfu cultivation art could support Wuxiu all the way to Yuanfu, while the Heavenly Dipper cultivation art could support Wuxiu all the way to Heavenly Dipper. Innate techniques could be divided into 3 levels and 9 grades. The 3 levels were the heavenly, earthly, and human levels. The human level corresponded to the arterial circulation realm, while the earthly level corresponded to the Yuanfu realm. Many thanks, teacher. Qin Wentian didn't stand on ceremony as he received the 2 manuals. The word, teacher, was extremely passionate, causing Mustang to roll his eyes. But soon after, a smile appeared on his face. The matter regarding Qin Wentian had finally come to an end. Teacher, what about me? Fan Lu winked at Mustang. Mustang looked at Fan Lu as he grinned. Whether or not I accept you as my disciple, I still need to consider it carefully. Don't be like this, teacher, I know I'm in the wrong. Fan Li's countenance sank, causing both Qin Wendian and Mustang to burst out laughing. This fatty was too shameless. Fatty, I already have a suitable cultivation art for you to cultivate. This is for you. Qin Wendian passed the cultivation art to Fan Lu, while keeping the innate technique for himself. Many thanks, what is this innate technique? Fan Lu moved to the side of Qin Wendian, as he whispered, Thousand Hands Imprint. This innate technique is exceedingly difficult to cultivate. When cultivated to the highest level, one would be able to unleash the Thousand Hands imprint with unimaginable might. Elder Thousand Hands became famous because he cultivated this technique, earning him the title of Elder Thousand Hands. Qin Wendian, you have to study it well. Mustang reminded Qin Wendian. I will. Qin Wendian nodded. He had already mastered the dragon subduing fist, and he already had the spirit refinement method and the dreamcast art. Now that he had obtained the Thousand Hands imprint, it was naturally for the best. Okay, this is your Emperor's Star Jade Medallion. During this 1 month of seclusion, cultivate well. When you guys come out, I will get your senior brothers and sisters to bring you to understand the situation of the academy. After speaking, Mustang stood up and left. Fatty winked at Qin Wendian before he left to study the innate technique. Qin Wendian flipped through the pages of the Thousand Hands imprint. This innate technique looked extremely simple, and there were only 5 forms to it: Diamond Imprint, Revolving Sea Imprint, Emptiness Imprint, Desolation Imprint, and Great Thousand Hands Imprint. The first form, Diamond Imprint, was extremely strong and unyielding, possessing boundless might. The second form, Revolving Sea Imprint, was akin to waves crashing against each other, containing a hint of softness amidst the hardness, containing boundless might. As for the Great Thousand Hands imprint, the palm imprints emitted were akin to a 1,000-armed Buddha, capable of crushing the heavens and earth. Although this Thousand Hands imprint is tyrannical, it consumes a great deal of yuan energy. Only by condensing yuan energy into a terrifying palm imprint would one be able to unleash such a fearsome attack. Qin Wendian mumbled to himself. The stronger the attack, the more yuan energy it consumed. Spirit refinement method, divine imprints. Qin Wendian suddenly thought of a possibility. The first level of the spirit refinement method required the user to condense divine energy using first-level divine imprints. In that case, if he were to condense divine energy using palm imprints in tandem with this Thousand Hands imprint, how terrifying would the power be? As he thought of this, Qin Wendian's heart pounded. In his memories, there was a palm imprint divine imprint. This type of divine imprint could be used to forge divine weapons that could amplify one's attack power. With this idea in mind, Qin Wendian started to put it into practice, and started to cultivate the spirit refinement method. The cultivation of the spirit refinement method was extremely difficult, and it consumed a great deal of astral energy. The vast amount of astral energy could only be condensed into a single divine imprint. After which, using a special method, the astral energy would be condensed into a single granule of divine energy, which would then be stored in one's acupuncture points. This process was exceedingly slow, and after which, Qin Wendian gradually became able to enter the shallow dreamscape. Hence, he began to cultivate in his dreams, condensing his divine energy. In the shallow dreamscape, the speed at which he absorbed the astral energy from the 9 heavenly layers was much faster. In the future, if he were to enter the dream creation and dream forgetting realms, the speed at which he could absorb the astral energy would definitely be even faster, and he would be able to make up for the time spent on cultivating the spirit refinement method. Of course, after this month, Qin Wendian would still have to think of ways to obtain more yuan meteor stones to support his cultivation. As time flowed by, Qin Wendian's cultivation of the spirit refinement method gradually reached the entry level, and the speed at which he condensed his divine energy increased. Sometimes, he would even sleep for 3 to 4 days, cultivating in his dreams. This caused Fatty to be so bored that he was about to go crazy. He really wanted to leave this place earlier, and interact more with the beautiful female students of this batch. A month's time quickly passed. Qin Wentian directly slept in the pavilion as the astral light from the heavens cascaded down onto his body, flowing into his arterial pathways. After which, the astral energy from the astral light converged together, unceasingly condensing into the shape of a palm. After which, the astral energy was gradually compressed, and finally flowed through the arterial pathways to be stored in his acupuncture points. In this month of cultivation, not only did Qin Wentian master the entry level of the spirit refinement method, he also mastered the first stance of the Thousand Hands imprint. At the same time, he also expanded the size of his acupuncture points, allowing him to store even more astral energy from the astral light. When the astral energy reached the limit, that would be the time when the second arterial pathway would be formed, signifying that he had stepped into the second level of the arterial circulation realm. Obviously, breaking through to the arterial circulation realm was much more difficult compared to breaking through to the body refinement realm. The amount of astral energy that could be stored in Qin Wentian's body had already increased by 6 to 7 times compared to when he first broke through. However, he still hadn't managed to form his second arterial pathway. From this, one could see that the disparity between every level of the arterial circulation realm was extremely great. The reason why Qin Wentian was able to defeat Orphan was because his instantaneous burst of strength was too overwhelming, directly crushing Orphan. If it was a battle of attrition, he definitely wouldn't be able to win, because the amount of astral energy in his body was far inferior compared to his opponent. Chapter 50. Qin Wentian and Fan Lu finally saw Thousand Hands again. These few days, although there had been people delivering food to them, Thousand Hands had yet to appear. Elder. Qin Wentian stood up and called out. Emicham, Thousand Hands nodded. Qin Wentian, the matter has been investigated. Someone is willing to testify for what happened in the dark forest. Orphan had indeed brought people to hunt you down. As for what happened on the stage a month ago, the disciplinary committee has already announced to the public that it was a matter of personal vendetta. Your punishment is to be confined for a month, and your ranking will be the last amongst the new students. Qin Wentian had a smile on his face when he heard Thousand Hands' words. It was absolutely forbidden to kill a fellow student within the academy. Yet, the disciplinary committee had used the word personal vendetta to explain the punishment. It was obvious that the disciplinary committee was biased towards him. Qin Wentian naturally understood this point. Not only that, this punishment couldn't even be considered a punishment. It was merely a 1-month period of closed-door seclusion. Such an obvious bias could be seen by everyone in the academy. However, this was reality. As long as you had enough talent, you would be able to enjoy extraordinary treatment. Many thanks, Elder. Qin Wentian smiled as he thanked Thousand Hands. After bidding farewell, he and Fan Lu left the courtyard together. Just as they exited, a white blur leapt into Qin Wentian's embrace. Little rascal stretched out its head and rubbed its face against Qin Wentian's. In front of Qin Wentian, a seductive silhouette stood there. Her eyes were filled with charm as she stared at him. Female vixen. Fatty's eyes instantly lit up as he stared unblinkingly at Luo Huan's ample bosom. This figure, TSK. Fatty was already swallowing his saliva. Senior sister. Qin Wentian smiled as he walked forward. Luo Huan similarly walked towards Qin Wentian, hooking her arm around Qin Wentian's as she smiled. Little fellow, you've finally come out. Feeling the softness on his arm, Qin Wentian immediately smiled bitterly. Could she not tempt him like this? After all, he was at the age of 16, a hot-blooded age. Fatty jogged forward, arriving at the other side of Luo Huan. After which, he obediently called out, Senior sister. Luo Huan glanced at Fan Lu, only to see that Fan Li's arm was slightly bent, as though he was waiting for Luo Huan to do the same. This scene caused Luo Huan to be stunned for a moment, but she soon recovered and smiled at Fan Lu. Senior sister, I'm Brother Wentian. Fatty took the initiative to approach Luo Huan. Luo Huan laughed and hooked her arm around Fatty's. Momentarily, an intoxicated expression appeared on Fatty's face. Was Fatty's spring finally here? Gotcha. Ah. Fatty let out a painful howl and immediately squatted on the ground, hugging his right arm. His forehead was dripping with sweat. Lifting his head, Fatty saw Luo Huan hugging Qin Wentian as they walked away. Tears welled up in his eyes. They were all brothers, but why was there such a huge disparity in treatment? Shouldn't they share blessings together? Boss, wait for me. Fatty gritted his teeth and ran forward. It seemed like he would have to follow his boss in the future. The Emperor's Star Academy was extremely vast, with many buildings. It had the Enforcement Hall, Elder Hall, Glory Hall, and the Student Association. Naturally, the Enforcement Hall, Elder Hall, and Glory Hall were all unique. The Student Association was formed by the students of the Emperor's Star Academy. The strongest student associations in the Emperor's Star Academy were the Azura, Sky Fiend, Night, and Green Cloud associations. Other than this, there were three most important places in the Emperor's Star Academy. The first place was the Heavenly Star Pavilion. The Heavenly Star Pavilion contained a vast amount of cultivation arts and innate techniques. The second place was the Astral River Hall. Within it, the pressure from the astral rivers could be simulated, and it could temper a stellar martial cultivator's astral perception, as well as their ability to withstand pressure. This allowed stellar martial cultivators to continuously squeeze out their potential, striving to break through their limits and condense an even higher grade of astral soul. The third place was the Dream Sky Forest. This place was even more mystical. It was an incomparably gigantic dreamscape, and as long as one entered it, they would be brought into a dreamscape. This dreamscape was connected to the four great academies of the royal capital, the Emperor's Star Academy, the Royal Academy, the Divine Wind Academy, and the Seven Stars Academy. Heavenly Star Pavilion, Astral River Hall, Dream Sky Forest. Qin Wentian mumbled in a low voice. After listening to Luo Huan's introduction, his heart trembled. The Emperor's Star Academy was undoubtedly the #1 power in the Chu country. Even people from other countries would travel thousands of miles just to be a part of it. These three wondrous places played an extremely important role. Senior sister, what's the deal with the Dream Sky Forest? Why is it connected to the other three academies? Qin Wentian curiously asked. The Dream Sky Forest was created by an expert from my Emperor's Star Academy who was proficient in dreamscapes. In the beginning, it was only connected to the Emperor's Star Academy, allowing the students of the Emperor's Star Academy to enter a state of combat at any time without losing their lives. After that, the other three academies sought the help of this senior from the Emperor's Star Academy. The senior from the Emperor's Star Academy also felt that if there were more experts participating in the dreamscape, the students of the Emperor's Star Academy would be able to temper themselves better. Luo Huan explained, hence, the senior from the Emperor's Star Academy went to each of the four academies, and used a special innate technique to create this dreamscape, connecting the four academies in the dreamscape. This was an advantage for the students of the Emperor's Star Academy, as the students of the Emperor's Star Academy all gained immense combat prowess from the dreamscape created by the senior from the Emperor's Star Academy. Not only that, there were some extraordinary geniuses among them who were extremely willing to use the dreamscape to challenge the students of the Emperor's Star Academy, in order to temper themselves. This senior's heart is truly magnanimous, and he's willing to benefit others. Qin Wentian laughed. There's no death in the dreamscape, so of course they'd be more than happy to improve their strength. A seductive smile appeared on Luo Huan's face as she stared at Qin Wentian. Junior brother, don't underestimate this dreamscape. That's an extremely deep dreamscape, and the yuan energy of your true body would be expended during combat. Not only that, the taste of death, if you've experienced it before, I believe that no one would be willing to experience it a second time. Qin Wentian's countenance stiffened, before he smiled and nodded his head. Currently, he was also cultivating the Dreamcast art, so he naturally knew how realistic dreamscapes were. This was especially so for the second and third levels of the Dreamcast art. The second level, Creation Dreamscape, allowed one to immerse themselves in the dreamscape. In the dreamscape, death would be an extremely realistic feeling. That kind of feeling would definitely not be good. And according to the records of the Dreamcast art, upon reaching the third level, the Oblivion dreamscape, the dreamscape would no longer be considered a dream. If one died in the dreamscape, their brain would be stimulated, and their true body would die as well. The intensity of the dreamscape in the Dream Sky Forest should be equivalent to the second level of the Dreamcast art, Creation Dreamscape. This dreamscape was created for the students of the 4 great academies to cultivate. Boss, why don't we go to the 7th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion and choose some supreme innate techniques? Fan Li's eyes lit up as he stared at Qin Wentian. Luo Huan smiled faintly as she looked at Fan Lu. From what I know, junior brother Qin is currently ranked last amongst the freshmen, while you are ranked second to last. Your Emperor's Star Jade Medallion should still be at the first level, and you can only enter the first level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion to choose the simplest innate techniques. Qin Wentian and Fan Lu were both depressed. They were actually ranked last and second. What about the Astral River Hall? Fan Lu asked again. Same, you can only enter the first level. Don't tell me that we can't even enter the Dream Sky Forest. There's no restriction in the Dream Sky Forest, you can enter at any time. Luo Huan smiled as she continued, let me send you guys to your lodgings first. You guys can then decide if you want to enter the Dream Sky Forest. Right. Qin Wentian and Fan Lu both nodded their heads. Luo Huan brought the two of them to the lodgings of the freshmen. The rooms were extremely simple, causing Fan Lu to sigh in admiration. So confinement wasn't a punishment, but a reward instead. Every batch of freshmen, this place would always be fully occupied. I'm afraid there won't be any more rooms left. Luo Huan smiled as she walked towards the side of the building, only to discover that all the rooms were already occupied. Only when they arrived at the outskirts of the Dream Sky Forest did they discover a small, unoccupied house. The environment here isn't bad, we'll reach the Dream Sky Forest in just a step. Luo Huan smiled. The freshmen's lodgings were situated right next to the Dream Sky Forest, allowing them to enter the Dream Sky Forest to temper themselves. Senior sister, where will you be staying? Fan Lu pitifully looked at Luo Huan. This place was a little too simple and crude. Don't even think about it. When you raise the grade of your Emperor's Star Jade Medallion to the 4th level, you'll be able to choose the villa you want to stay in. Luo Huan smiled as she continued, work hard. How do I raise the grade of my Emperor's Star Jade Medallion? Fan Lu asked. This was also a question that Qin Wentian wanted to know the answer to. It seemed that if one wanted to enjoy good resources, they would have to raise the grade of their Emperor's Star Jade Medallion. The rankings of freshmen are determined by the Glory Institute. For freshmen, those ranked below 30 will have their Emperor's Star Jade Medallion upgraded to the 1st level. From the 30th to the 4th level, the Emperor's Star Jade Medallion upgraded to the 2nd level. From the 3rd level to the 3rd level, the Emperor's Star Jade Medallion upgraded to the 3rd level. However, if you want to raise the grade from the 3rd level to the 4th level, you'll have to hand over 100 2nd layer Yuan Meteor Stones to the Glory Institute. From the 4th level to the 5th level, you'll have to hand over 300 2nd layer Yuan Meteor Stones. From the 6th level to the 7th level, stop. Qin Wentian shouted, silently wiping away the cold sweat in his heart. From the 5th level to the 6th level, 1000 2nd layer Yuan Meteor Stones? Was she trying to scare him to death? Luo Huan giggled as she looked at Qin Wentian. The Emperor's Star Academy has to provide for so many people, do you think it doesn't require resources? These resources can't be obtained by the elders, right? Naturally, we have to depend on the students. Only by doing so will we be able to temper all of you. Even so, there's no need to be so ruthless. Qin Wentian mumbled. Ruthless? Luo Huan laughed. With the 6th level of the Emperor's Star Jade Medallion, one can already enter the 6th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion. The cultivation arts there are already at the peak of Yuanfu, and even the innate techniques there are at the superior grade of Earth grade. 1000 second layer Yuan meteor stones is only equivalent to 10-3 ND layer Yuan meteor stones. This price is simply too low. Upon hearing Luo Huan's words, Qin Wendian froze for a moment, but after some thought, he realized that it was indeed the case. The 6th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion was already extremely useful for cultivators at the later 3 levels of Yuanfu. Not only that, 1000 second layer Yuan meteor stones wasn't considered much at all. However, Qin Wendian couldn't help but feel depressed in his heart. In the past, in the Sky Harmony City, the first heavenly layer Yuan meteor stones were extremely valuable. This was because the amount of Yuan meteor stones in the Sky Harmony City was extremely low. Every single Yuan meteor stone represented a chance to nurture a stellar martial cultivator. Hence, everyone treated it as a treasure. But in the royal capital, it was completely different. Chapter 51. Fatty rolled his eyes. If the 6th level of the Heavenly Star Pavilion was already at the peak of Yuanfu, then what about the 7th, 8th, and 9th levels? Senior sister, could it be that there are Heavenly Dipper cultivation arts and innate techniques on the 6th level? Luo Huan smiled at Fatty. In the thousands of years of history of the Emperor Star Academy, is it really that strange to have Heavenly Dipper cultivation arts? But as for what exactly, I have no idea. After all, I've never been there before. Even if there were Heavenly Dipper cultivation arts, it didn't mean that one would be able to cultivate to the Heavenly Dipper realm. The most important factor was still the talent of the cultivator. With the thousands of years of history of the Emperor Star Academy, it wasn't strange for them to have Heavenly Dipper cultivation arts and innate techniques. Not only that, can you afford to pay the price? Luo Huan smiled as she continued, if you guys are unable to enter the top 30, you can also use your Yuan meteor stones to upgrade your grade to the 3rd level. If you guys wish to advance further, but you don't have enough Yuan meteor stones, you can head to the Glory Institute to accept missions and obtain virtual Yuan meteor stones to upgrade your grade. A mission with 1000 second heavenly layer Yuan meteor stones, I don't even dare to think about it. Fatty mumbled, I thought that the Emperor Star Academy would use Yuan meteor stones to nurture me, but who would have thought, the Emperor Star Academy has given you the best cultivation environment, as well as a competitive environment. If you can't fight for it, you can only blame your own incompetence. If everyone were to rely on the Emperor Star Academy to nurture them, then the Emperor Star Academy wouldn't be called the Emperor Star Academy. Luo Huan smiled as she continued, okay, next, enjoy yourselves. There will be a surprise in store for you guys. Lastly, let me remind you that it is absolutely forbidden to disturb the dreamscape of others. After speaking, Luo Huan departed. Fatty was somewhat reluctant to part with her, but he didn't dare to follow her. He could only follow Qin Wendian and clean up the place. Shall we go to the Dream Sky Forest for a stroll? Fatty smiled as he looked at Qin Wendian. Yes. Qin Wendian nodded his head. He also wanted to experience the wonders of the Dream Sky Forest for himself. After exiting the room, they slowly walked towards the depths of the Dream Sky Forest. Instantly, a wave of drowsiness assaulted their senses, causing them to feel dizzy. How powerful, this senior's strength should be at the pinnacle of Yuanfu. To be able to create a dreamscape, he must have borrowed the power of an array formation. Qin Wendian guessed. He saw many figures lying under the ancient trees. Obviously, they were all disciples who had entered the dreamland. Beauty. However, Fatty didn't think too much about it. He looked around with his bright eyes and discovered that a young girl had also entered the Dream Sky Forest. She slowly sat down under an ancient tree and fell asleep. Under Qin Wendian's speechless gaze, the fatty ran directly to the girl's side, lay down under the ancient tree and closed his eyes. This made Qin Wendian secretly wipe his sweat. This bastard is too much of a bastard. Drowsiness engulfed him unceasingly. Qin Wendian could only walk to the back of the ancient tree where Fatty was resting and close his eyes. Very swiftly, he fell into a deep slumber. In the dreamland, Qin Wentian surveyed his surroundings. At this moment, he was actually in the middle of a city. Occasionally, he could see the silhouettes of others. Fan Lu and the young girl were not far from him. Because they had entered the dreamland under an ancient tree, their positions weren't too far apart. "Hello, my name is Fan Lu. Is this your first time entering the dreamland of the Dream Sky Forest?" Fan Lu asked the young girl. "No, I've been here a few times. My name is Sheena. I've seen you before during the ranking battle." "How awe-inspiring." The young girl smiled as she looked at Fan Lu. That day, when Qin Wentian and Fan Lu killed Orphan on the arena, all the new students had witnessed it with their own eyes. Hence, Qin Wentian and Fan Lu were worshipped by many. "Oh." Fatty seemed to be somewhat embarrassed as he smiled shyly. "In order to avenge my brother, I wouldn't hesitate to risk my life. Luckily, I managed to escape unscathed and met a beauty the moment I entered the Dream Sky Forest." Sheena's face reddened. She was somewhat embarrassed by Fatty's words. Cough, cough. Qin Wentian coughed, interrupting the conversation between the two of them. He had to save this pure and innocent girl from her predicament. Qin Wentian. Joy appeared on Sheena's face as her eyes shone with a bright light. In this 1 month, Qin Wentian had become the hottest topic among the new students. On the first day he entered the Emperor Star Academy, he killed Orphan in a domineering manner, and at the same time, he released his 4th heavenly layer astral soul, becoming the first person in the history of the Emperor Star Academy. Seeing the look on Sheena's face, Fatty stared at Qin Wentian with a hint of bitterness in his eyes. How could he destroy the feelings of others like this? "Sheena, can you tell us more about the dreamland you were in?" Qin Wentian stared at the city in front of him, his heart filled with shock. Those who cultivated the mandate of dreams could bring others into their dreamland, and the others would have their own consciousness. Just like when he cultivated the Dreamcast art, he knew what he wanted to do in his dreamland. Now, it was the same. They had their own consciousness, but the dreamland they were in was a dreamland created by others. This was the power of dreamland, it was as real as reality. The city in this dreamland is known as the City of Illusions. After those from the 4 great academies entered, they would directly appear in this city. Because the dreamland is an illusory existence, you can do whatever you want in the dreamland without any restrictions. Hence, the city is extremely chaotic, with endless battles between the various academies. Especially between the various academies, there would often be intense battles, tempering one's combat prowess. Sheena slowly continued, there are also those who love to battle, and they would go around looking for people to challenge, tempering themselves. How do I exit the dreamland? Qin Wentian asked. If this was his own dreamland, he could rely on his own consciousness to exit it. But this was a dreamland created by others, and it wasn't so easy to exit it. Do you see those towering structures? Sheena pointed to a tower-like structure in the distance, so tall that it seemed to touch the heavens. Not only that, there were a few other tower-like structures in the distance. There's a door at the bottom of these structures, you can exit after entering it. Sheena smiled as she replied, of course, other than this method, you can also exit by dying. However, no one would be willing to try dying. Boss, aren't you going to look for senior sister Luo Huan? You go first, I'll follow Sheena around. Fatty saw that Sheena's attention was completely focused on Qin Wentian, and he couldn't help but interject. Qin Wentian glanced at Fatty, only to see Fatty continuously winking at him, causing Qin Wentian to silently despise this wretched fellow. Okay, I'll go look for senior sister Luo Huan, you guys go ahead. Qin Wentian granted Fatty's wish, as he turned and departed. Sheena could only bring Fatty along to explore the City of Illusions. This city was extremely vast, and one could see the silhouettes of people everywhere. Occasionally, there would even be people fighting. At this moment, Qin Wentian furrowed his brows. His acute senses told him that someone was staring at him. Qin Wentian didn't bat an eyelid as he continued to stroll around the city. However, this time around, he was heading in the direction of a tower-like structure. This way, he would be able to exit at any time. At the same time that Qin Wentian had this feeling, Fatty also felt that he was being stared at. His eyes narrowed as he smiled at Sheena. Sheena, you go ahead and explore by yourself. I have some matters to attend to, so I'll have to return first. Sheena was somewhat puzzled, but she soon nodded her head as she replied, but right now, we're quite far away from the exit. If you want to exit, you'll have to walk in the direction that Qin Wentian went earlier. I understand. Fatty laughed as he continued walking forward, as though he hadn't heard Sheena's words. At this moment, from the various corners of the city, several silhouettes suddenly appeared. Fatty abruptly halted his steps as his countenance turned unsightly. He had been surrounded. Knights Association. Sheena's countenance stiffened when she saw that these people were all clad in robes with the insignia of a knight. This was the Knights Association, one of the 4 strongest student associations. They wanted to deal with Fatty. Fatty, quickly run, they're from the Knights Association. Sheena reminded from behind. Fatty could only smile bitterly. He wanted to run, but the cultivation bases of these people were all higher than him. There was no way for him to escape. The members of the Knights Association continued to press forward, manifesting astral spears in their hands as killing intent gushed forth. This caused Sheena's countenance to turn pale. They wanted to kill Fatty. From afar, there were several spectators who were familiar with Fatty. They couldn't help but to silently muse that Fatty was truly unlucky this time. A raging wind gusted by as over 10 members of the Knights Association simultaneously rushed towards Fatty. That terrifying astral wind was so strong that it felt as though it could tear space apart. Fatty knew that he would die for sure. Hence, he closed his eyes and chose not to resist. Ah! Miserable screams reverberated through the air, causing many in the crowd to turn their gazes over. When they saw what was happening, their hearts trembled violently. Numerous long spears pierced through Fan Li's hands, legs, and other parts of his body. The only 2 fatal points that weren't pierced were his heart and chest. Hence, Fan Li, who had always wanted to die, was still alive. But this kind of life was worse than death. You are all senior students. How can you treat him like this? Sheena's face was completely pale. These people were all experts of the Knights Association, yet they dared to treat a newbie like this. You want to try too? A pair of cold eyes stared at her. Sheena was so scared that she didn't dare to speak. Too ruthless. The people in the distance were also speechless. The Knights Union was one of the 4 strongest student unions, and now, they were dealing with a newcomer. This was indeed vicious. Is this really a fucking dream? The fat man gritted his teeth, his body bleeding profusely. He raised his head and saw a figure standing at the top of a building, his night robe fluttering in the wind. A member of the Knights Association, Orkan. Chapter 52. Orkan's sharp gaze seemed to penetrate through space as he stared at Fan Li, his eyes filled with an incomparable coldness. A month ago, he brought Orphan's corpse back to the clan. At that time, he couldn't forget the looks the entire clan had when they looked at him. Such humiliation, he would definitely make them pay for it. Son of a bitch, if you don't kill me, I will kill you sooner or later. Fan Li grinned as fresh blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. When Qin Wentian heard Fan Li's screams of agony, he madly sprinted back to where Fan Li was. The members of the Knights Association also appeared around him, but they didn't obstruct him from running towards Fan Li's location. Instead, they followed behind him, as though they wanted him to witness Fan Li's miserable state. When Qin Wentian arrived, Fan Li was already covered in blood. Sheena was not far away from him, her body trembling uncontrollably. She had never imagined that this dreamscape would be so cruel and torturous. Fatty. Qin Wentian's eyes were bloodshot. Fan Li struggled to turn his head, only to see Qin Wentian grinning from ear to ear. Boss, Wake me up. That won't do. He's in extreme pain in the dream world. If he's woken up directly outside, it'll cause terrible consequences. It's very likely that he'll lose his mind. At this moment, silhouettes appeared on the roofs of the surrounding buildings. The one who spoke was none other than Luo Huan. She stared at Orkan as she said in a cold voice, "The Knights Association has sent out so many experts just to deal with a single new student. How shameless." Orkan didn't bother with Luo Huan. His cold and arrogant eyes stared down at Qin Wendian as he coldly stated, "I only want him to understand a principle. In this land, talent doesn't mean everything. There's still a long way to go, so be prepared to accept the baptism of reality. Kill." Orkan spat out a single word. In an instant, the experts of the Knights Association charged towards Qin Wendian. Buzz! Luo Huan and the rest directly leaped downwards. While in the air, Luo Huan spoke to Qin Wendian, "Remember, in the dreamscape, if you are facing a mortal enemy, the best ending for the loser would be death." Qin Wendian stared at the experts of the Knights Association rushing towards him. Abruptly, he took a step forward, causing the ground to tremble. Chi, chi. A terrifying spear light shot out like a poisonous dragon. Qin Wendian slightly shifted his body, allowing a long spear to pierce into his heart. At the same time, his dragon-subduing fist struck out with a terrifying power. With a loud bang, the head of the person in front of him exploded. At the same time, Qin Wendian also died in his dream. Even if he were to die, he would drag someone down with him. Phew! In the dream sky forest, Qin Wendian opened his eyes as he took in deep breaths of air. His heart pounded rapidly. Earlier, he had truly experienced death. Such a feeling, even though he knew it was just a dream, it still caused him to feel despair. Drawing in a few deep breaths, Qin Wendian had yet to calm his heart. He directly rushed towards Fan Lu, only to see the chubby body of Fan Lu trembling uncontrollably. The flesh on his face was contorted in agony, as though he was experiencing something extremely painful. Fatty. Qin Wendian clenched his fists tightly. Seeing Fatty in such agony, his heart was filled with pain as well. Arg! Fatty suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream as he opened his eyes. His entire person was sprawled on the ground, gasping for breath as his entire body convulsed. Son of a bitch. Fatty took a long time to regain his composure before raising his head. His eyes narrowed as a cold light flickered within. Are there any problems with your body? Qin Wendian nervously stared at Fatty. Don't worry, it's just a dream. Fatty grinned, as though he didn't mind at all. However, the cold glint in the depths of his eyes betrayed him. Evidently, as long as one had experienced that kind of torture, they would never be able to forget it. No, I want to sleep again. Let's leave this place first. Standing up, Qin Wendian and Fan Lu hurried out of the dormitory. How did you get out? Qin Wendian asked. Senior sister Luo Huan personally killed me. If not, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to get out. Fan Lu replied. The Knights Association really gave us a lively lesson on the first day. This lesson was indeed lively. Qin Wendian nodded his head. The two of them returned to their dormitory and rested for a period of time. After which, they walked out of their rooms, only to discover that many students were already heading out. Hurry up, the Knights Association and the Green Cloud Association are about to clash. There's going to be a good show. Someone exclaimed. Qin Wendian and Fan Lu glanced at each other before following after the crowd. The lesson the Knights Association had given them was enough to be engraved in their hearts. Not long after, they arrived at an empty plot of land in the Emperor's Star Academy. There were many people gathered there, and in the middle, there were two groups of old students standing opposite each other, exuding a terrifying cold intent. Orkan. Qin Wendian abruptly shifted his gaze in a certain direction. Orkan and the rest had already exited the Dream Sky Forest, bringing along the members of the Knights Association. Senior sister Luo Huan is here as well. In another direction, Luo Huan and the rest were there. Luo Huan and the rest were from the Green Cloud Association. Qin Wentian and Fan Lu walked towards them. Senior sister. Qin Wentian called out to Luo Huan. Luo Huan's beautiful eyes glanced over, before shifting her gaze onto Fan Lu. Smiling, she asked, "You've woken up from the dream, do you still remember it?" "I can't forget it, it's engraved in my heart." Fatty grinned. "That's good. Don't blame senior sister for not warning you guys about the dangers of the Dream Sky Forest. There are some things that can only be understood after experiencing the pain. Consider this as a lesson from the Knights Association. Although this lesson was a little painful, it's still just the beginning of your life in the Emperor's Star Academy. Remember, the Emperor's Star Academy isn't a greenhouse. I'll only tell you the most basic things. As for the rest, you'll have to experience it yourself." Luo Huan smiled at the two of them. "Do you hate the Knights Association?" "Of course." Fatty laughed. "Then think of a way to trample them under our feet. If not, we'll be trampled under our feet, just like in the dream." Luo Huan continued smiling. That smile of hers contained hints of wisdom and farsightedness. The Knights Association is truly impressive, to think of so many experts to ambush two new students in the City of Illusions. Luo Huan inclined her head, staring at the members of the Knights Association. Her beautiful eyes, at this moment, flickered with a cold light. "So what of it?" Orkan faintly stated, as he glanced at Qin Wentian and Fan Lu. His countenance was as cold as ice. "This is only the beginning." Shameless trash. Mountain's temper was extremely bad, as he roared at the members of the Knights Association. "You don't have the qualifications to speak to me." Orkan swept a glance at Mountain before shifting his gaze onto Luo Huan. A faint smile could be seen on his face as he continued, "The Knights Association and Green Cloud Association have been fighting for so long. Why don't we take a break and play some new tricks?" "How do you want to play?" Luo Huan inquired. "My Knights Association has recruited 2 new students, and your Green Cloud Association has one as well. How about a 4-man battle?" Orkan laughed as he looked at Luo Huan, causing her countenance to turn unsightly. Everyone knew that the Knights Association was the one that attracted the most new students. The reason was simple. The members of the Knights Association were all descendants of nobility. The Emperor's Star Academy was established to nurture the most outstanding stellar martial cultivators. Here, there were no boundaries, only talent and ability. There were many nobles in the royal capital, and the descendants of those nobles weren't like the silk pants that many people imagined. Although there were some silk pants among them, there were also many who were extremely outstanding. In addition to the resources they had, many descendants of the nobles chose to enroll in the Emperor's Star Academy. After that, they gradually formed a power, which was known as the Knights Association. The establishment of the Knights Association caused a storm of nobility within the Emperor's Star Academy, and the Green Cloud Association was born. They believed that the Emperor's Star Academy was a clean place, and that there shouldn't be any atmosphere of nobility. They didn't care if you were a noble or not, but they hated such an atmosphere. Hence, the Knights Association and the Green Cloud Association had always stood on opposite sides, and gradually, they became mortal enemies. Long before the Knights Association and the Green Cloud Association were formed, the Heavenly Demon Association had already existed. The Heavenly Demon Association was the only alliance of students in the Emperor's Star Academy, and they had the longest history. The Azura Association was the last to be established. They couldn't be bothered with such matters, and only focused on improving their own strength. The members of the Azura Association were the most ruthless towards themselves, and they would spend most of their time in the dark forest to temper themselves. Out of the 4 alliances, the wealthiest was naturally the Knights Association. This wealth was sufficient to raise the grade of their Emperor's Star Jade Medallion. This kind of wealth allowed 2 of the top 3 students to join the Knights Alliance. The first was Murong Feng, and the third was Du Hao. Murong Feng was at the 4th level of arterial circulation, while Du Hao was at the 3rd level. Evidently, Qin Wentian and Fan Le had already been treated as members of the Green Cloud Association, and their cultivation bases were only at the 1st level of arterial circulation. The Knights Association had an overwhelming advantage in the battle proposed by Orkan. 2 silhouettes walked out from behind Orkan. These 2 silhouettes were none other than Murong Feng and Du Hao. Murong Feng was the strongest amongst this batch of new students, while Qin Wentian was the one with the highest potential. The gazes of the 2 of them intersected in midair. I admit that you have talent. In the future, you might have the qualifications to stand in front of me. But now, every time I hear people talking about me in the same breath as you, I can't help but sigh in my heart. Why are there so many idiots in the Emperor's Star Academy? Murong Feng's voice was emotionless, causing the surrounding crowd to be in an uproar. Without any suspense, Murong Feng, who had defeated all his opponents and obtained the position of the top ranker, had the confidence to say such words. Being of the same age as Qin Wentian, he had his own pride, and he wouldn't allow anyone to blaspheme him. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.